Welcome, Cosumnes River College family, to our Spring 2023 Convocation, Reflect, Reset, and Reimagine. I'm Leslie Gale, English faculty and your current professional development coordinator. And thank you. We're going to start with our land acknowledgement at CRC. We pause to acknowledge that Cosumnes River College sits on the land of Miwok and Nishinon people. We remember their continued connection to this region and give thanks to them. We offer our respect to their elders and to all Miwok and Nishinon people of the past and present. We'd like to acknowledge that we have Trustee Knight here today. If you would give us a wave. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to start our program today with a Sankofa libation ceremony led by Baba Jerry Marshall and Dr. Teresa Aldridge. Jerry Marshall is a retired, or as he prefers to say it, refired educator from American River College in Sacramento. He now enjoys the fruits of his labor through traveling, mentoring, and adjunct teaching in his golden years. As an elder in the community, he gives agency to his students and others to deconstruct ineffective ideologies and modalities, continually guiding them to reach their full potential. His life's journey has been driven by his desire for self-actualization and is rooted in an ancestral legacy of Black excellence and anchored in a desire for spiritual expansion. Mr. Marshall is actively engaged in the wisdom of healing his community through his service as Vice President of the Umoja Community Education Foundation Board of Directors in Sacramento, and as a board member of the Alive and Free Omega Boys Club in San Francisco. Mr. Marshall is also a contributing author to the book series Our Black Fathers and Mothers, Brave, Bold, and Beautiful by Jocelyn Gaines Vanderpool. He considers himself a free-spirited intuitive who is optimistic, wise, and compassionate, and guided by an ethic of love. Mr. Marshall holds a BA from Sonoma State University, a MS from Oklahoma State University, and an MA degree from the University of Laverne. It almost goes without saying who Dr. Teresa Aldridge is. She has 30 plus years as a counselor here at Cosumnes River College and also a longtime coordinator of Umoja Diop Scholar Program. She also currently serves as our campus union president. I'd like to welcome Dr. Aldridge and Baba Jerry up for our ceremony.
Welcome, which means, or I would say Akwaba, which means welcome.
In West Africa, there is a tradition that no important event can begin without the permission of elders.
Elders are wise thinkers and have the ability to see the unique gifts and talents in those who are younger.
Elders can be described as persons whose words are listened to and who command respect and attention.
Elders have the ability to sit quietly and listen and to respond with a sense of calm in their voice.
You know what? I think we just described who we are.
Is there anyone else out there who fits this description and is at least 60 years of age or older? If so, would you please stand? I said, we described ourselves.
Remain standing.
Remain standing.
Remain standing, please. Remain standing. Now, can we collectively agree that it is okay to begin the spring 2023 convocation? The elders who are standing.
Do we have your permission? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the intent and the theme for this spring convocation were the same. Reflect. And when we reflect, we want you to embrace a perspective that may be different from your own. To reset, we want to reinforce the significance of the teaching and learning environment, and to reimagine an opportunity to build community with your colleagues.
The meaning of Sankofa. For those of you who do not know, Sankofa is an Akan word which translates to, it is not taboo to go back and fetch it if you have forgotten. In other words, to go back and grab the essence of the past and to bring it to the present for a forward thrust into the future. Now for the acknowledgement.
The Sankofa Ancestral Acknowledgement. We acknowledge and thank all people of African ancestry who were stolen from their homelands and brought to this country, and whose free labor played a major role in the formation and economic wealth of this country. We also honor the contributions of African American ancestral scientists, inventors, and entrepreneurs whose contributions were stolen or never acknowledged due to white supremacy. We honor and we will not forget the thousands upon thousands of lives lost at the hands of enslavers, vigilantes, law enforcers, and other forces of hatred in this country, generation after generation, for the singular crime of being Black, Indigenous, or other people of color. We affirm and uplift those African ancestors living in this country today as living testaments to the strength, love, faith, and fortitude of a resilient people. Ashe.
Now for the pouring of libation. In light of our keynote speaker today, we thought it would be fitting to pour libation to honor and recognize African American ancestral educators and leaders. Pouring libation is a ritualistic act of pouring a small amount of liquid, in this case water, as an offering to honor and recognize those who have passed on. Pouring libation is also a way of showing appreciation for the ancestors' contributions and sacrifices. As we pour libation today, we would like your participation. After the water has been poured, and in this case into a plant, our collective response will be Ashe, which means so be it. It is also customary to begin with a short prayer before pouring libation.
So let us pray. To the Almighty that is called by many names, we thank you for opening up everyone's hearts and minds and comforting the souls of everyone underneath the sound of my voice. We give thanks for the opportunity to restore and reconnect with that has been lost. We thank you for the virtues of compassion and forgiveness, as these are the gifts that heal the wounded. We thank you for the divinity that exists in each and every one of us and that exists in our students. We give thanks, honor, and respect to all of our ancestors, those whose names we will call today, and to those who we may not call. Ashe.
Ashe. Let us never forget the resilience and tenacity of people who were once forbidden by law to learn to read and write, who later fought for the right to educate themselves and still today work tirelessly to ensure fair and equitable access to education. We draw on the strength of our ancestral educators and leaders like
Booker T. Washington, educator, author, orator, and presidential advisor, we say Ashe.
Ashe. Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, sociologist, historian, teacher, civil rights activist, Pan-Africanist, author, and co-founder of the NAACP. We say Ashe.
To Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, educator, civil rights leader, and co-founder of what is now known as Bethune-Cookman University, we say
Ashe. Dr. Asa Hilliard, psychologist, author, teacher, and historian of the African diaspora. We say
Ashe. To Benjamin Banneker, who proposed in his acclaimed almanac almost 100 years before the Department of Education was created, that a secretary be appointed with power to establish and maintain free schools in every city, village, and township in the United States, we say Ashe.
Ashe. To Thurgood Marshall, civil rights lawyer, and later the first African-American Supreme Court justice who successfully ended racial segregation in public schools in the 1954 landmark case, Brown v. the Board of Education.
We say
Ashe.
And finally, to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., clergyman, Nobel Prize recipient, social activist, and renowned leader of the civil rights movement, who dedicated his life in fighting for justice and equality for African Americans, economically disadvantaged, and all victims of injustice, we say
Ashe.
And to the countless others whose hard work, determination, and sacrifice made it possible for us to stand here before you today. Ashe. Now that we have prepared this space for teaching and learning to take place, by honoring and thanking the ancestors, we would like to bring your focus, to those of you into this room, right here. Be present. We would like you to take a few moments to reflect on this. What can a teacher do to get you excited about learning? What can a teacher do to get you excited about learning? That is, what inspires you to want to learn in a teaching and learning environment? I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to think about it. Don't tell anybody. Just think about it for 30 seconds.
Now that you've had a few moments to reflect on it, we would like for those of you in the room to get in small groups of 3 or 4, kind of at tables already, and share your reflection of what teachers can do to get you excited about learning. You have about 3 minutes now to share. Ensuring that everyone in the room has a group, so you might need to move around a little bit. For those of you watching online, we would like for you to share your reflection by phoning a friend.
Or texting a friend.
Oh, 3 minutes. I don't know. Yeah, we're gonna do, yeah. So it'll probably be close to 8, maybe 8:58, or 8, no, that's 5, yeah, 8, yeah, 8, no, not 8:58, 8:53. No, it's already 8:53. Maybe, let's see, there's another minute. how we're doing on time, like in terms of where we're supposed to be in the program. Because I don't remember if we started on time or not.
You had 20 minutes, and I don't think this is taking 20 minutes.
Oh, good, good, great. So then that'll give Dr. Bush a little bit more time. All right, so it might not be 3 minutes, but what do you think? Should I let them, should I do the I go, I make, or give them 1 more minute?
Give me 1 more minute because I'm listening to the interactions and
Okay.
conversations.
Okay. How are we doing? We're supposed to be finished at 9? Oh, thank you.
Are we
We're
on?
perfect timing.
Are we on time?
I go.
Amen.
I go.
Amen. You know, I don't think some folks know what that means.
I go means, do I have your attention?
And Amen is a collective response. We say I go, you say I may, which means you have my attention. Then you get quiet. Now that we have had time to think about what inspires you to learn, now share with the members of your group what turns you off in the teaching and learning environment. In other words, what causes you to shut down and give up on learning? Again, we're going to allow you 2 to 3 minutes to discuss that in your group. What turns you off in the teaching and learning environment?
Okay.
See, we have the eye in the sky.
I go.
Well, thank you for being willing to share the things that inspire you to learn, as well as the things that make you want to call it quits. The point of this exercise was to build community with one another, as well as to point out that all of us are teachers at different moments in our lives, and we are all students at some time. So whether you're standing in front of a group of students in the classroom, standing at the counter in the financial aid office, or answering phones in the dean's office, we all have an opportunity to inspire someone else to want to be here by how we greet them, how we speak to them, and how we listen to them. So please be a force for good in whatever your role you play here at the college. Ashe, and thank you.
In our group, one of the things that was just mentioned for the last question was we can learn and we're motivated to learn when the teacher brings their spirit, not just their intellect, with them. And I really felt your spirits, Baba Jerry and Dr. Aldridge. Thank you so much for opening us with such a wonderful spirit. Next, we are so lucky to have, as you know, Omari Tao as one of our colleagues here at Cosumnes River College. I don't know how we were so blessed, but thank you for being here and thank you for staying here with all of your other options that you have. So Professor Towers is going to honor us with a musical number called Lift Every Voice and Sing.
The text to this song is in your program. You can follow along or sing along if you know this melody. You are invited to stand. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our wearies, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. away from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Wow. Wow, how do we follow that? What a welcome. Yeah, I feel like that's going to carry me through for a long time. Thank you so much for that. Once again, welcome. We hope that you had a joyous holiday season and a restful winter break. I want to take just a moment to thank the many volunteers who worked to make this happen. As you walked into this room, you probably thought, wow, is this a banquet? Is this a wedding? This is really fabulous. And much of this is due to Andrea Dean. And her creative talents, and many of her classified professional colleagues who helped out with the setup, as well as our facilities. And also, I want to honor and thank Sabrina Sensel for her tireless and I'm not using that word lightly, tireless, because I was up at 10:30 and 11 when she was sending updates, and I knew that she was still working, and she has put her heart and soul into this as well. I want to make sure that everybody knows that the official program is on this code that you should have scanned as you checked in. So please make sure that you're referring to that as we go through our program. And I want to welcome our Student Senate President to be our first speaker. We're so lucky that we have a wonderful Student Senate President with us, Ms. Jocelyn Avila, and I'm going to turn the mic over to her.
Thank you so much. Let's fix this a little bit. I'm only 5'4". Alrighty. Good morning, Cosumnes River College faculty, staff, and any students that may be present. Wonderful performances thus far, you guys. Absolutely beautiful. My name is Jocelyn Avila, and I am your current Student Senate President for the school year of 2022 to 2023. I want to go ahead and let you guys in on a little bit about myself, who I am, a little bit of my past, and where it is that I plan to go as I use the Cosumnes River College as a stepping stone with my career goals and my academic development. I am a political science major, and I hope to concentrate or minor in economics, and to some universities I am considered pre-law. Some of my career goals that I've had ever since I was a teenager have fallen under law or law and justice. I was born and raised in Calaveras County, and I've moved around a little bit from Southern California to Central California. So I've gotten a little bit of exposure in terms of diversity. I know that we still need leadership, so I took it upon myself to really delve into leadership roles and get engaged, whether that be in college or outside of college itself. As we know, so sorry. I'm a little new to public speaking, so. As we know, this Convocation's theme is Reflect, Reset, Reimagine. But what does this mean exactly for our college? It means these times are the perfect moments to emit change, update items, and put these items into motion. Such motions will affect the college in the upcoming semester and the upcoming years. We have been shown that things can move quickly, and the ability to adapt with change is a skill in itself. That is definitely what these last couple of years have showed us. As for how this theme affects the college and how the Student Senate has taken a part in representing the student body, reflecting on the needs that feel important to the students in some retrospect to trends outside of the campus in itself. These include needs that the college has focused on for some time to previous heightened demands. These include mental health, basic needs, the continuous focus on underrepresented groups, such as the LGBTQ+ community, foster youth, and minority racial groups. As our Student Senate continues to be involved with standing and participatory committees, which, by the way, we now know that this is a great way for college faculty and staff to know what it is that the student body actually does need. We have all come together to mediate what works best for our college students, including newly written bylaws, which are the requirements for our students to be included in clubs and organizations. And I will take this time to also mention that this is the first full Student Senate body the college has seen since the commence of Dr. President Bush's entry to the college. Together, we've worked with providing the college with updated services to continue with the goal of retaining students and helping them gain their academic success and focus on their overall well-being. This includes housing, super exciting, hopefully by 2025, right? Woohoo! And a little birdie told me that we are one of the first colleges nationwide to try to implement text-free college textbooks on our campus. Another topic that we're currently discussing is our lobby day discussion, what it is that we will be bringing over to the Capitol in terms of lobbying that notion. One of these focuses include mental health. This is something that we have really seen a spike in over the last couple of years, and it's greatly needed. So hopefully we can possibly lobby that or something else. That's going to very much so benefit the students and faculty as well. My time with the college has been a little bit short. In terms of my career development and academic goals, I hope to leave the Student Senate in really good hands. It already is in amazing hands. I leave to the Marine Corps this upcoming June and continue to develop my stepping stones in my career goals. I hope to land a job within finances and legalities, and I am so blessed and so thankful to have been a part of the Cosumnes River College. Thank you guys all so much.
Well done, Jocelyn. Thank you so much. We're so happy to have you. Those of us who were part of the adjunct faculty convocation last evening, we get a little bit of a preview of some things that may happen on Friday. And when our classified Senate President, Tiffany Clark, spoke, she gave us a little teaser of something special that she has for us, and I've been excited ever since to find out what that is. If you've been here for a while, you know that Tiffany is extremely creative with her metaphors and motivating with the object lessons that she brings with her. So I'd like to welcome her to the mic to see what she has to tell us today.
Good morning. I like to walk around, so I wanted the hand hold. Jocelyn, I have been doing public speaking for 20 years and I still get nervous, so you're in good hands for sure. I am honored to stand here representing the classified professionals of Cosumnes River College, and thank you. These are my colleagues. This represents the leadership team of Classified Senate. And what I will tell you is that collectively, we represent over 80 years of experience within Los Rios, the majority of which has been spent right here at Cosumnes River College. And if there's something that you need help with, you have a question about something, you need some assistance, I can pretty much guarantee that we are currently doing it, we have done it, or we know who does it. So feel free to seek us out if you need anything. Oh, wrong way, sorry. Now you see here on this slide lots of names. So this represents the folks that have been hired over the fall semester. So we have a ton. I'm not gonna go through all of them, but what you see here are people that have gone from temporary to permanent. Some have promoted into new positions, and then we do have some brand new folks on the list as well. So if you see your name on the screen and you are in the room, please stand, give us a little wave so that we can recognize you. Thank you, thank you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Awesome, welcome. And for those of you that are watching on live screen, if you see somebody's name on here that you recognize, send them a little congratulations, a little note that says, way to go. All right, so let's get into it. So if you have attended or viewed a convocation during my tenure as Classified Senate President, you know that I tend to share something that is just personal to me, something that has been an experience in my own life, or something that has really resonated with me in the days or weeks leading up to convocation. And so this morning will be no different. One thing that I will say that was a little bit different this time is that it wasn't until Wednesday morning that I got the inspiration for what I wanted to share. So it was cutting it close, but we got there. So what you see on the screen here are gingerbread houses. So over the break, my daughter and my nephews and a cousin engaged in a gingerbread decorating competition. And unbeknownst to my sister and I, we were chosen to be the judges. So we got a FaceTime call once their houses were complete. And each team had an opportunity to tell us what their house name was and point out all the features. And then we were to deliberate and decide on a winner. So you can see they did an amazing job. They got really creative. I love the little fire pit in the front on the one. And that one even you can't see, but on the side it has a fence made out of noodles. And there's rosemary that's used. And the one right here has a great little path with the trees and bushes. But the one that actually won was this one at the top. The other teams were outdone. What do you mean that's the winner? What you can't really tell from this photo is that on the roof, on the sides, on the left side, the eyes are M&Ms and smiley faces. And then on the other side, it was just frosting, smiley faces. And so it wasn't the most elaborate gingerbread house that grabbed us. It was how they made us feel. And that one really just made us smile, made us happy, and we actually giggled when we looked at it. And so today I really want to reflect on I really want to focus on two of our R's, the reflect and the reimagine. And so as I was reflecting about what I wanted to share, I couldn't help but reflect on all that we have been shouldering in the last couple of years. As a campus community, there have been some incidences that have really rocked us. Right now, our state is reeling from all of the severe weather that we've had, and there's more to come. Globally, we've been dealing with the pandemic and so many other things, the things that you're dealing with just in your personal lives, and it just has been a really heavy time. And so the fact that these smiley faces are what won us over really made me think about how much we're needing just those little joys in life right now. I will say that my daughter particularly was so outdone that she posted this picture on Instagram and asked for people to vote because she was not happy that her team did not win. So Wednesday morning, where I got my inspiration for what I wanted to share today, it was during Dr. Shakunda Rogers' workshop that she presented. And I had not experienced her before, and she was wonderful. She gave us some really great tips and tools. There were a couple of books that she recommended as well, and she really took us through several mindfulness activities that we could use. Those were amazing. And I described her to a friend as a warm blanket. Just her energy, her spirit, her love, it just felt comforting and warm. So what you see on this screen is my own very favorite warm blanket, as well as my dog, who's kind of camouflaged there. He's like the same colors as the blanket, and he enjoys it as well. And so she was great, but what I think I appreciated the most about the workshop was the sharing. So we talk amongst our family, amongst our friends, about how heavy things feel, about what we're going through, but we don't often share in that way in the workplace with our colleagues. And people were willing to be vulnerable and to be open and honest and talk about how they were feeling. And I really appreciated that. It's not that hearing somebody else say it necessarily takes away the angst or the stress or the anxiety, but somehow knowing that there's somebody else who's feeling the same way that you're feeling, who's going through the same things, that had the same thoughts, it just somehow makes it feel lighter. And so as I was listening to others share and thinking about the workshop, in the title was heart. And it made me think about heart just as a symbol in and of itself and how much that can mean and convey. We use hearts every day, right? Once we realized like this Zoom thing is here to stay, people started feeling more comfortable using the reactions, and you'll put up a heart when you're wanting to show appreciation for someone, or that, yeah, I really like what you said there. Social media, if you want to agree with something that someone has said or you found it interesting or funny, you use a heart. Text messages, there's all sorts of different heart emojis that you can use, and it's something so simple but so very recognizable to very many people. So this simple heart, I want you to think about it and think about two different ways that you can use it. And I'm going to challenge you this semester to reimagine how you extend care and love to yourself and to your colleagues. So for yourself, one of the things that was shared during the workshop is that we don't often take the time that we need to engage in self-care, and when we do, we feel guilty about it. And so one of the things that Dr. Rogers said is feel the guilt and do it anyway. And she also said it doesn't have to be this big grand thing. It can be the little simple things. So I am talking to myself as much as I am you. And so I'm going to do all the things that I need to do to remind myself to extend that love and care. So today I have this charm necklace that was given to me by some very dear co-workers who have become friends. I got it on my shirt. I got love on the socks, right? I'm doing all the things. And I want to encourage you to take those little moments. I'm going to spend extra time in my devotion time in the morning with my noise-canceling headphones and the spa music playing. I am going to say no to the things that I don't really want to go to, and yes to my couch and my warm blanket. I'm going to open the good bottle of wine on a random Tuesday. And I encourage you to do those same things. Today, I am putting the Employee Assistance Program phone number as a contact on my cell phone. So when I need to call for more sessions, I don't have to dig for the phone number. So do all the things that you can do, easy little things to love and care for yourself on a regular basis. Now, I also want you to reimagine how you can love and care for your colleagues as well. And it's the little things that can really matter and mean so much to people. So take the time to send a message to someone to say, hey, I'm just thinking of you. Those of you that are viewing live stream, send a heart to someone in Skype right now. Send somebody an email that says, hey, just checking on you, how are you doing, how was your weekend, without then also asking for something. Put just a random note, something, an inspiration, or just, I appreciate you on a Post-it and leave it on somebody's desk. And it's those little things that can mean so much in someone's day, that can lift their spirits, that can give them just that little extra oomph that they need to continue on. And so I did bring something to help you with that. So during the break, we'll pass around on the tables a couple different things. So I've got some heart stickers for you, and then I've got these heart, just little cutouts. So I want you to use the stickers as a reminder to yourself. Put it on your monitor, on your name badge, on your dashboard, wherever you're going to see it to remind you to extend that love and care to yourself. Or you can use it and stick it on somebody else's area. The note cards are for you to just write a simple little note and send it through intercampus mail to someone or leave it on their desk. Put it on your door or on your window at work so that people can see those tangible reminders as well and know that, hey, they're in this with me too. And so that is the challenge that I want to leave you with today, is to really go into this spring semester leading with your heart and extending that extra love and care to yourself and to each other. Thank you. And now I have the great honor of welcoming to the mic my colleague and friend, Academic Senate President Scott Crozier.
Reflecting a little bit on that anxiety, it usually makes us talk a little bit faster and get a little bit more excited, which I think makes us great educators for those of us in the classroom. I've got some great things to present today, to talk about today. We have our executive team here, and I'm excited to highlight them. I noticed the pictures, however. And we can redo our pictures. Greg and I got our pictures done at the beginning of 2019. So I don't know what the 4 years have done to us, but reflecting, resetting, and reimagining what we looked like 4 years ago. It's so cute. So much of it. I'm grateful. I want to talk a little bit about these folks. I have been richly blessed to have an amazing executive team. And why I say that is because I come with one perspective and one frame of mind, and we set things right when we first started working together. And I shared with people that I really needed them and that I needed their perspective and I needed their voice. And as we look across this group of people, I don't know if you know them or not, but very different perspectives, very different voices. And I have been richly blessed and kept out of trouble a lot of times by their wisdom and by their assistance, and I really appreciate them. It's a rotating thing, though. I did want to point out that I won't be president forever, and this crowd won't always be on this slide. I want to invite as many of our faculty who have maybe thought about it, who are considering it, who are just about ready to put their finger or their toe in the pool to join us and to serve in Senate and to serve as a member of the executive team. There have been some amazing opportunities that I've had, some great experiences that I've had, and most importantly, some amazing people that I've been able to work with over this time. I get to highlight a few of them in just a moment, but anyway, I do want to encourage that. I am also very grateful for our wonderful Senate and for the support that they give to me. There's always the fear, there's wood here, so we'll knock at least on that, always the fear that we're going to jinx something, but I felt very supported and very appreciated as I've been serving in this position, and I appreciate all the faculty and the support that they give. So either they haven't recalled me yet, so either they think that I'm completely inept and don't want to hurt my feelings, or we're doing something right. So I, again, appreciate all of you who have been serving with me in Senate and who work in all of the different capacities. Perfect. So let's highlight some of our faculty. I have 2 awards to appoint. The first, oh no, jumped the wrong spot. Oh well, we saw it. All right. We have our Golden Hawk Award. There are 2 awards that I get to present. Our first is our Golden Hawk Award. This award acknowledges an individual or group that is exceptional in contributing to the advancement of intercultural harmony, equity, and campus diversity at their college. I received these beautiful letters of recommendation, these nomination letters, and so I'd like to share a little bit. Alex, if you'd like to join me up here as I read through this, it would be my honor to have you with me. They must like you. Yeah. We all appreciate you.
I still don't have any hair, so.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, you're still young. This nomination letter, I think, sums up really well some of the thoughts that we have for Alex. Throughout the semester, I've seen Alex ride in at 8 a.m. on his motorcycle in the freezing cold, making photocopies of readings and grade handwritten assignments for his incarcerated students. He travels over 40 miles each way to the prison and sometimes has to work around the oppressive conditions within the prison system, such as lockdowns and head counts, that not only interfere with his teaching schedule, but directly affect his ability to leave the prison and get home at the end of the day. Despite all of these obstacles, Alex views his incarcerated students as scholars in their own right. To him, they are students with abundant life experience, creativity, and critical thinking skills, not faceless inmates with learning deficiencies. He speaks about them with pride and admiration for their tenacity and hope in the face of utter oppression by the state. To me, Alex's approach not only embodies the spirit of anti-racist public education, but actually models how we, as community college educators, may put care into our pedagogical practice. Alex, thank you for being who you are.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Buenos dias, mis colegas. Good morning to everyone, and I am so honored to be here with all of you. And rather than have me talk, I wanted to share some words from my incarcerated students just so we get a feel of the people that we teach. One of my students wrote this in his introduction to the class when I asked him to give a little bit of information about who they are. And he writes, I am literally the busiest inmate/student that you will ever have in your class. My day starts at 5 a.m. when I prepare the day's plan. I spend all day doing agendas for meetings that I have with prison-related departments, and I work on proposals to address and find solutions for literary, every prison-related issue imaginable, for food service, program schedules, groups, etc., which is a never-ending task. Then from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m., I'm back in my prison cell, working as a prison clerk and studying for all of the classes that I take. After 9 p.m., I return back to my cell and spend about 3 to 4 hours doing college work, correspondence courses, after hours work, and so forth. I get my 5 hours of sleep, and then I do it all again. Sometimes I overwhelm myself by taking on too much, but I never drop the ball. And when I'm slipping, I ask people to point that out. I do the best that I can because my life literally depends on it. I say literally because getting out depends upon my completing this every possible program and this course and obtaining my BA degree. I am not your average student. I spent every hour and every moment earning my freedom so that my little 9-year-old daughter who depends on me can also be free. These are the students that we teach, folks. I am deeply honored to accept this award. I'm humbled by all of your support, but I don't accept it for myself. I accept it on behalf of all of us who do this work. I only teach history, but we teach music and sociology and welding and art and math, and so it takes all of us, and I'm so deeply honored to be part of this collective. Thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's see how we do here. All right, good. We also have our Crystal Apple Award. This award honors a full-time and part-time faculty who demonstrate the highest level of commitment to their students, college, and profession. Award recipients have a record of outstanding performance of professional activities, as well as a record of active participation on campus. I'd like to read a little bit from the nomination letter here as well. Andy is committed to removing barriers to students barriers to student access and success. And she advocates for resources that are accessible, sustainable, and high quality. She's aware of the workload and burden to faculty in transitioning to OER, and she's created a framework of support with tools, peer resources, and research to facilitate and ease this process for her colleagues. Andy is passionate about student equity, and this commitment informs her work on every level. She invests her professional skills, time, and energy in building resources that serve current and future students. We could recognize together Andy Atkins-Pogue. Andy, unfortunately, is unable to join us this evening, or this morning. It looks like evening, this morning. However, she did leave a video thanks for us.
I have been doing, and I really wanted to be there in person today, but I'm recovering from COVID, and I still have a bit of a cough, and I didn't want to put anyone at risk. But it's humbling to receive an award like this when I know really it's all of the hard work that the faculty have been doing that have allowed me to see successes in this program. And even the other nominees for the Crystal Apple, Brian, who's working so hard in automotive to help convert classes, and Emily, who has been such a support to me and to you, and to help get this initiative off the ground in the library. Really, all three of us should be receiving this award today. When I was approached by Dr. Bush to lead this project, I didn't want to do it. I didn't think that we could achieve this goal, and frankly, I was scared, and I didn't want to be leading a project that I thought was destined to fail. So I know how hard this work is. I know when faculty tell me it's too much work, you're asking so much of us. I hear you, and I completely understand that. But I also know how the cost of textbooks impacts our students. When I was working in the library, and I would work with students who would come in looking for access to their expensive textbooks, and sometimes the library had them, but not always. And sometimes students would say that they were going to have to drop the class because they couldn't afford the book. Having zero textbook costs helps remove those barriers. It creates more equity and hopefully more success for our students. Now that was anecdotal, but we have actual data from our students. We conducted focus groups this past fall with help from the research office and Katie Wilson. We interviewed several students about zero textbook costs and how it impacted them. And we came away with 5 key takeaways, but the one that stuck out to me was the fact that the cost of textbooks has a bearing on enrollment decisions. We had one student who was enrolled in 5 courses, and 4 of those were zero textbook cost, and that student had specifically sought out those classes. We had one student who had paid as much as $200 to purchase a textbook, so they were looking for any way to help reduce costs. When we asked students how they would use money that they saved from not having to purchase textbooks, we got answers like, I would use it for living expenses for myself and for my children. One student said their parents were paying for their education, so they were looking for any way to help reduce costs. Another student said they were saving up to buy a laptop. And just as we can be cynical about our students, sometimes they can also express cynicism about us. Consider this quote that we got from one student who said, "There are classes where the professor requires a textbook and I don't even really use it. I kind of felt like it was a way for them to just take my money." Open educational resources help eliminate that cynicism, and they offer you more control. You can help make your classes more relevant, more meaningful, and hopefully a lot less stressful for your students. And all of that leads to success. Again, thank you so much for acknowledging my work. I also want to acknowledge all of the work that you have done. When I started this project, we had 162 ZTC sections. This semester, we have more than 700 zero textbook cost classes. We are leading the district in ZTC sections. Math, biology, chemistry, the sciences, many of those disciplines are offering free resources to their students this semester. But there is more work to be done. In the social sciences, foreign language, business, where we are struggling to find faculty who are willing to convert a single course, other Los Rios colleges are prepared to offer a full zero textbook cost degree pathway. So every course in the sequence is being offered as ZTC. This is a challenge we can't ignore. It's going to help us be more competitive. Last fall, Dr. Bush challenged full-time faculty to get 50% of full-time faculty to sign up for this initiative, and we achieved that goal in December. So I thank you so much for all of you who have committed to do this work. Our ultimate goal is to become a zero textbook cost campus by next fall of 2023. So as I conclude this morning, my challenge to you is that if you're on the fence at all, please just come to a meeting. Come to my office hours, seek me out, get your questions answered, sign up so that you can get paid for this hard work to convert courses. Thank you again.
Perfect. Well, highlighting some of our faculty is one of the highlights of this position. I'd like to, as we transition here, mention another one of the highlights of the position of Senate President. It's to be able to meet wonderful faculty, but also to rub shoulders with some of our wonderful administrators. In the fall convocation, we were outside and it was a beautiful day and we had the shade of the trees and the breeze blowing through. And I looked over at about this point and I saw Dr. Bush sitting there and he seemed really tense. He seemed to be pondering a lot. And I don't know if he was praying that the day was over or if he was where he was, but I could see that he was getting ready to share with us his message. And it wasn't just getting all hyped up or looking at note cards. It was in deep thought. So I don't know, I leaned over to him and said something corny or cheesy that he seemed to appreciate. And so today I'd like to do the same and share with you, Dr. Bush, something corny or cheesy. We all admire you. We all appreciate you. We all respect you, and we appreciate everything that you do for our college. With great honor, I'd love to introduce our college president, Dr. Bush.
I was already emotional. Then y'all just added to it, and Scott indeed just added to it. I have a little shorter time with you this morning, so I want to be mindful of that. And before I start in a way that I would traditionally start a semester, I would like for us to take a moment of silence for the student that we lost this Monday. I had a chance to talk to his mother on Wednesday night, and I told her that the thoughts and prayers of our college are with her and her family during this time. And so I want to honor that promise to her now, and in our moment of silence, send thoughts with our former student who's no longer with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, I want to reiterate it's indeed a pleasure to have the president of the Board of Trustees with us, Trustee John Knight. Give him another acknowledgement for him being with us. And now, I'll do it one more time just because it feels good. And now, welcome to the best spring semester in the history of Cosumnes River College. They're telling me to step back. I'm like, good luck with that. I'd like to introduce our new managers. Give them a round of applause. For our new managers, we have Acelia, Director of Trio and STEM, Jenny, Interim Dean of English and Language Arts, Gladys, our new Dean of Library, Learning Resources and Student Services, Jose Gonzalez, Interim Director for the Mi Casa Title V program. Welcome back, Khalid Kabiri, Director of Student Services and EOPS. Michelle Steiner in her new role as Interim Director of Hawk Cares and Basic Needs. Trinity Wilson, our new Director of Upper Bound, and Tyler Wallins in his new role as Interim Dean of Business and Computer Science. Let's give them all a round of applause. Stand, wave, be recognized. We're so proud of you and your accomplishments. CRC, we've been getting recognized for a lot of different things lately as a result of your hard work. One of those recognitions is identifying 3 of our employees, 49 faculty, staff, and administrators that were recognized throughout the entire community college system, and we had 3 from CRC. And these were the 3 leads of our Guided Pathways work. And that is why they were nominated and were recognized. Alex Casareno, who's in a new role at the district in HR, as you know, was our dean here, co-chaired those efforts. Tiffany Clark and Dana Wassemer, would y'all please stand so we could give you your acknowledgement. Congratulations to all of you. I said 46, it's 43 members. Really, my job today is just to provide context to be able to set up our speakers. And as I was reflecting yesterday on my message, this really is probably more of a message for me than you. As I begin to reflect where we are as an institution, I am really kind of opening myself up to some insight of some tension and some struggle that I'm experiencing as we move into this next phase of our institutional work. And I was reminded, thanks to to Dr. Oliveris the other day is that we're situated in this moment of time, going into the weekend and the Monday as we celebrate the life of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And that immediately brought me to one of my most favorite books when I was growing up, was this book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. Where do we go from here? Chaos and community. Dr. King isolated himself for the first time in his leadership life. He actually went to Ocho Rios, Jamaica. That's a great place to isolate yourself, by the way. And in 1967, he began to be in a position that he needed to reset, reflect, and reimagine what the movement will be moving into this next phase. Now, be mindful that in 1967, we're coming off of already what happened in Montgomery Boyce boycott. We're coming after Selma. We're coming after the passage of the Civil Rights Act. We see growing impatience that emerging in urban communities, so much so we begin to see civil unrest in our cities, in our community, and people are questioning whether or not the nonviolent approach is the best way to bring about freedom and liberation for African people and other marginalized communities. So Dr. King found himself at this tremendous crossroads in life to see if he was still relevant, if his message still mattered, did it still resonate with the community that he loved and was serving. He indeed was in a moment of deep reflection. He had achieved a lot. The movement had made monumental and historic gains in progress, but he knew much work remained. In fact, the hardest work remained. It was when he was in Ocho Rios that he decided whether or not he was going to speak against the Vietnam War. It was in Ocho Rios during this time of reflection and reimagination that he decided that he was going to speak to economic injustice, knowing the danger and the harm and the controversy and the discomfort that decision was going to create. He knew that he was even going to isolate those who were closest to him, but yet he understood that if we were going to make gains in this country, for everyone to be treated as equal citizens, that he had to make the difficult decision to continue to press. Got to make the difficult decision to continue to press. Not comparing myself or my leadership to Dr. King, but I can relate. I am struggling with this notion as a leader and as an institution. Where do we go from here, coming off the dual pandemic of institutional racism that we went through, the murdering of George Floyd, we went through the killing and murdering of Breonna Taylor. When we're coming off, seeing the disconnection from our social networks because of the pandemic, where do we go from here? And Dr. King posed this idea, where do we go from here? From chaos, our community, and the question that I'm grappling with and the question that I'm asking us to consider as a college community is, where do we go from here? Complacency? Complacency? Or do we seek to bring ourselves collectively together for a higher purpose, to press, to do deeper work through this idea of building and holding community? It's a real question. It's a real decision point, right? Because just as Dr. King and the movement had made tremendous accomplishments, no one would have blamed him if he was not in Ocho Rios to write a book, but just to sit on the beach, because he deserved to do that. He deserved just to celebrate everything that he was able to accomplish and how far he was able to move and to push this nation. Like, I have a right in my mind to sit in my office and look at the fountain and chill for the work that we have done for the past 8 years since 2015. You have a right. As classified professionals and faculty, you have done tremendous, did I say tremendous? You have done tremendous work. You have propelled this institution to unparalleled historic success. You have a right to say, Dr. Bush, I ain't doing no more ever. Don't ask me to do another thing. You deserve that. In fact, I can say you earned that for your sweat, your tears, your hard work, putting yourself out, making a sacrifice, putting the needs of others before yourself. You have done that, and you deserve to be recognized and to be celebrated. The question has to remain is, can we, should we, are we obligated with all of the collective genius and resource that we have in this room? Do we press even further? Do we take a breath? Do we gather ourselves and say, what does this next phase of our college look like? We got recognized as a champion of higher education by the Campaign for College Opportunity just this year. We had a flawless accreditation, no recommendation. Where did they do that at? Flawless. First in the district to build student housing with our grant. Unparalleled increases in graduation and transfer rates. Before 2018, when I arrived in 2015, we had 0 federal grant dollars, 0. Today we have over $5 million in just federal grant, close to $10 million when you put all our grants together. 50%, you heard Andy say, we are well on our way by fall of 23, where no student who attends our college will have to buy a textbook. 50% of you all, 50% of our full-time faculty have signed up for us to be a zero-cost textbook institution. We send 10 members of our Black faculty and staff community, not to Southern California, not to West Florida. We're sending to West Africa to attend the first annual African-American, All-African Diaspora Educator Summit. So that's why you saw the culture infusion of what happened today was a reflection of what they learned and what they got in Ghana. We're producing the first annual State of Latinx Students, Faculty, and Staff that's going to be released this upcoming spring. We are doing a lot, but the question is that enough? Are we comfortable in being complacent? And it's a real decision point that I have to answer for myself, that you have to answer for yourself. You have to reflect and ponder. We're going to celebrate this. We're going to have a party. Y'all don't like parties? I'm going to say it again. We're going to have a party to celebrate this. But also would like to say that we make a declaration to say that this is just the foundation. This is just the evidence that whatever we believe is possible can happen. This is just evidence that whatever we believe is possible can happen. Eliminating the achievement gap is possible because we believe it. Having culturally relevant material in all our classrooms, culturally relevant syllabus, is possible because we believe that we can do it. Being a zero-cost textbook institution is possible because we said so, no matter if no one else in the nation has done it. We believe that we can do it because we are CRC. To be in community means that we have to tackle some tough stuff. Not being complacent means that we are unable to just rest with having surface interaction and surface relationships. Being in community means that we have to exercise a sense of compassion, empathy, understanding, and overstanding about the lived experience of those that we are in contact or in community with. Being in community is about operating with a certain level of cultural humility. It's about reducing and eliminating your ego, understanding that this ain't about you. That it is not about me, but it's about us. It means that our actions are dictated by the simple notion that if it's not good for my community, if it's not good for my students, if it's not good for the classroom, then it's not good for me. And why am I doing it? If we are using I too much, that should be a sign of our check that we're moving in the wrong direction. Out of our mouths should be the we, the us, the are. And not just my division and my department, but what's good for my institution. It's about grappling with the issues and understanding, yeah, we could talk about self-care, but how do we structure it as a couple? How do I make time for you to reflect? How do I not overload you, overburden you with nonsensical work for you just to be compliant as opposed to being productive? It's about me looking you in the eye when I ask you, how are you doing today? It's about me getting out of my office and connecting with you, shaking your hand or giving you a fist bump. It's about me respecting the work that you are doing each and every day, knowing that your contributions are extremely invaluable to what we're doing as an institution, and knowing that you matter. It's us understanding, as James Percy mentioned in a coffee with the president, it's us dictating what type of institution we want to be instead of us responding and just reacting and backing up into an institution that none of us will recognize when we're coming out of the pandemic. It's about us being intentional. It's about us not reverting to heteronormative institutional approach. Understanding the intersectionality of identities that exist within our institution. Regardless of sexual orientation or preference, we understand that we would not use whiteness as the default to our work. It's an understanding that we are in the business as educators to liberate hearts, minds, and community, and not to commodify and reduce education just to train people to be able to earn a check. Earning a check is a manifestation of their freedom and liberation and not the other way around. We need to have that type of conversation if we're not going to be complacent as an institution, if we want to build community. It's about us addressing in these last incidents that taught us that we went through in the fall, that there's a deep underlying issue and problem around anti-blackness. We have to own that. We have to own the internalized notion that we have about Black people, how we feel when we are in space and in community. That's more than talking about equity. That's more than talking about outcomes. It challenges us to be able to reflect about all the things and ideas that we have been taught intentionally and unintentionally. Last, we choose to truly be in community with each other. We understand that it's going to challenge our comfort level. If you haven't had to shift in your seat during one time of this convocation, we missed something. We went wrong. Because this convocation means to shift you, to get you to rethink, to get you uncomfortable, because we understand it's through that discomfort where we will begin to grow and to come together. And we understand that if we make it together, hold on to each other, even when you don't understand. Hold on when we are disagreeing with each other. Commit to the process. Commit to hearing from your colleagues, hearing about their experiences. Don't allow your ego and your sensitivity or your fragility to take you out of the process. When you do that on the other side of it, I guarantee you it's going to be worth it, because we will be in true community with each other. And when we are in true community with each other, graduation is going to go up by default. When we're in community with each other, transfer rates are going to go up by default. When we're in community with each other, enrollment is going to grow by default. CRC, let's make a commitment not to be complacent and to do the necessary, uncomfortable, hard work to put us in positions for us to have to be vulnerable. So we could be the best version of ourselves, the best version of our college, so we can present ourselves to the students and to community in the way in which they deserve. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
I hope that you have been uplifted and inspired so far in our Convocation program. And brace yourself for more uplift and inspiration as we hear from our two keynote speakers, Dr. Chike Akua and Dr. Vajra Watson. And I'm going to give you a little bit of information about both of them. Dr. Akua will be speaking first, and then immediately after Dr. Watson. Dr. Chike Akua, PhD, is an assistant professor of educational leadership and a leadership strategist to colleges, universities, educational conferences, and urban schools nationally. His research focus is on enhancing African American experience, student experience through Afrocentric and culturally relevant curricula, and student activities that increase engagement, achievement, and success. Dr. Akua's research has been published by academic presses in the following publications: African-Centered Education, Theory and Practice, the Journal of Black Studies, the Sage Encyclopedia of African Cultural Heritage in North America, the Handbook of Urban Education, and Black Male Teachers, Diversifying the United States Teacher Workforce. Dr. Akua has assisted in leading over 1,000 students and adults on study tours through Africa, including Ghana, Senegal, Egypt, and Morocco. Dr. Akua is a graduate of Hampton University and earned a master's degree in education with an emphasis in school counseling at Clark Atlanta University. Dr. Akua earned his doctorate in educational policy studies with a concentration in Social Foundations from Georgia State University. Dr. Vajra M. Watson is a scholar, activist, faculty director, and professor of educational leadership and racial justice in the College of Education at Sacramento State University. Dr. Watson has over 20 years of experience as a teacher, community organizer, and researcher. Dr. Watson is the founder of Sacramento Area Youth Speaks, acronym is SAYS, an award-winning program that pairs community-based poet, mentor, educators, and teachers together to develop grassroots pedagogies that reclaim and reimagine schooling. Dr. Watson is the author of 3 books, Learning to Liberate, Community-Based Solutions to the Crisis in Urban Education, Transformative Schooling Towards Racial Equity in Education, and The Soul of Learning, Rituals of Resistance, Magnetic Pedagogy, and Living Justice. Dr. Watson has published dozens of peer-reviewed journal articles and book chapters. Dr. Watson obtained her BA from UC Berkeley and holds 2 master's degrees from Harvard University in International Education and Teaching and Learning. She received her doctorate in Administration, Planning, and Social Policy from the Graduate School of Education at Harvard University. Dr. Watson identifies as a white, cisgender, female. As you probably have heard, they both have books available in the CRC bookstore and will be available for a little while after their speaking to sign books. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Chike Akua.
It is clear that there is something very special going on here at Cosumnes River College. Ashe? And so I want you to join me in saying, it's our time. Come on, it's our time. No limits, no boundaries. I see blessings all around me. No limits, no boundaries. I see blessings all around me. Give yourselves a wonderful round of applause. A great scholar by the name of Dr. Benjamin E. Mays said, it's 11:59 on the clock of destiny. And life is like a minute, only 60 seconds in it. Forced upon you, can't refuse it. Didn't seek it, didn't choose it. But it's up to you to use it. You'll suffer if you lose it. Give account if you abuse it. It's only a minute, but eternity is in it. And with that minute, you, me, and we can change and transform the world. Now, if you really believe that we in this room and we on this campus can change and transform the world, would everyone please say, Ashe? Ashe. It's got to be stronger than that. Ashe? Ashe? That's better. See, Ashe is a West African word, as you know now, that means I agree. It means let it be so. But it also represents the activating energy and the presence of the Spirit that is both within us and around us at all times. And so I'm going to use that word Ashe as a call and response today. Because when I say something that I want you to remember, I'm going to use that word Ashe and have you to repeat it after me. If I say something I definitely don't want you to forget, I'm going to use that word Ashe and have you to repeat it after me, but you don't have to wait until I say it. If I say something that leads to an instant awakening, then you can say Ashe. If I say something that taps your spirit or touches your soul, then you can say Ashe, and that lets me know we're all on the same page. Ashe? Wonderful. Let me tell you what an honor, privilege, and blessing it is to be here with you today and listening to those powerful remarks from Dr. Bush when he came back to his seat. I said, man, that was powerful. You want me to speak after that? Oh, my gosh. No pressure, right? But to all of the wonderful people who had a hand in putting on this wonderful event, from Dr. Bush to Dr. Claire Oliveros to Dr. Aldridge and Baba Jerry and all of the wonderful people who have had a hand in putting this together. Would you please give them a round of applause, please? I want to bring you greetings from Clark Atlanta University, one of our great HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, where I'm honored to serve on the faculty in the Department of Educational Leadership. And I I couldn't help but feel extra proud, not only of that amazing rendition of Lift Every Voice by Dr. Tao. Wasn't that amazing? That song was written by James Weldon Johnson and his brother, J. Rosamond Johnson, who were graduates of Atlanta University. And Clark College and Atlanta University later merged to become one exceptional university. Ashe? And so it's a pleasure to be here with you all. I'm overjoyed for a number of reasons. As I was listening to Miss Clark, one of my little joys is that my youngest son, we just got him moved into his apartment near the campus of Georgia State University, where he'll be going. And so my wife and I are now officially empty nesters. That's one of my little joys that I'm celebrating. If you know, you know. If you know, say ashe. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's a big deal, right? And to Scott Crozier, where is Scott Crozier? I just want you to know, my brother, I was feeling you when you were speaking. Enjoy it while you have it. Because very soon you'll be joining the Baldhead Brotherhood like me and Dr. Bush. Ashe? All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into the message for today. I want to talk about honoring our ancestral obligations. Honoring our ancestral obligations. And so as we reflect, reset, and reimagine, I want you to think about who your ancestors are, known and unknown. And I'll be sharing a little bit about who my ancestors are in the process. But it's customary in my tradition, whenever we come together, we begin by giving honor to the Most High, who is known by many names and worshiped in many ways, certainly the one source and the one force through which we all live, move, and have our being. Ashe? The symbol that you see on the screen is called Jiniame. Everybody say Jiniame. And it is a West African Adinkra symbol which simply represents the omnipotence of the Most High. It's also customary in my tradition that we begin by giving honor to our ancestors because there's an African proverb which says, if we stand tall, it is because we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors. Or as Dr. Jacob Carruthers has said, indeed, our stride is wide because we're walking in the footsteps of giants. And as Baba Jerry and Dr. Aldridge poured libation to our educational ancestors, each and every one of those that they mentioned had a profound impact on my life. The one that probably had the most would be Dr. Asa Hilliard, who I had the opportunity to study under and whom I made a promise to that I would continue the work that he had begun. I have a lot of pictures and images to share with you, and you've heard it said before, everyone, that a picture is worth what? 1,000 words. So I have a lot of pictures and images that will be important, but it's not enough to look with your two physical eyes. You must look with what ancient Africans called the ujat. Everybody say ujat. The ujat is the all-seeing eye of enlightenment that allows us to see beyond the physical realm and into the mental and spiritual dimensions, even as the great poet Listervelt Middleton said, sharpen your eye and tune your ears so you know what you see and understand what you hear. If y'all are ready to get started, everybody say, let's get it. All right, here we go. So then my presentation is broken down into 3 parts. Part 1 just asks the question, well, what does it mean to honor our ancestral obligations? And to explain that, I would have to take you back to my senior year in undergrad. I was faced with the need to register for an elective class. I was suffering from a terrible ailment called senioritis. And my roommate, I was an education major, an English education major. My roommate was a political science major. And I did my undergraduate studies at Hampton University, another one of our great HBCUs. And as I'm flipping through the catalog, that tells you how long ago that was, flipping through. We don't have catalogs to flip through anymore, per se, when registering. But I was trying to figure out what class to take, and my roommate said, knowing the path that you're on, you should take Blacks in Politics. Knowing the path that you're on. What did he mean by that? Well, he had seen me undergo a dramatic transformation. He had seen me go from a person who is a non-reader to a reader, because I learned that readers are leaders and leaders are readers. Ashe? And he had seen me go through a traditional African rites of passage where I was given the name Chike, which means power of God. Ashe? And he had seen me becoming more, go through a dramatic cultural and spiritual transformation. And so He said, knowing the path that you're on, you should sign up for Blacks in Politics. And so usually the first question whenever you hear the name of a class is, well, who is the teacher or the professor, right? And he said, well, it's Dr. Locke. He said, look, man, she's no joke. But you're going to learn a lot. I said, man, it's my senior year. I'm trying to chase her. Nah, man, she's no joke, but you're going to learn a lot. And I knew she was no joke because I had seen my roommate and his friends staying up all night studying for Dr. Locke's test, and I wasn't trying to do that in my senior year. Nonetheless, my trusted friend and advisor, I took his advice, and I signed up for the class. Interesting thing happened on the first day of class. I get there early, a few minutes early. I get my seat right up front. Dr. Locke walks in. Well, actually, she didn't walk in. She glided in. You know, master teachers have a presence about them, right? She set her things down on the table, and then she just stopped and looked at everybody. My name is Dr. Locke. This is Blacks in Politics. Everything you heard about me is true. Whoa, how'd she know what I heard about her? Dang, it's a bad sister, right? And she proceeded to teach us in ways that I had never considered before. And one of the things that she also said on that first day was, right now, you're just a Negro. But if you listen, if you study, maybe by the end of the semester, you'll be qualified to call yourself African American. I said, dang, I thought I was born African American. I know I had to qualify. This class is too hard already. Man. But Dr. Locke was very special. She was not just a professor of political science. She was a practitioner of the craft. She would go on to become the first woman and the first African American to be elected as mayor of the city of Hampton. And then she would go on to become elected as a state senator in the state of Virginia. Ashe? And so she began to teach us in ways and with strategies and methodologies that I still use as a teacher and a professor today. Ashe? But when she said, maybe by the end of the semester, you'll qualify to be called African American, she was calling to our attention an obligation that we had. And it's something that Dr. John Henry Clark would later articulate in his study of ancient African civilizations. He said that all of these great empires, whether we're talking about Nubia, Kemet, or Kush in East Africa, whether we're talking about Ghana, Mali, or Songhai in West Africa, whether we're talking about Kanem Bornu in Central Africa, or whether we're talking about Great Zimbabwe in Southern Africa, all of these great empires and civilizations were held together by two things. And what are those two things, everybody? Honor and obligation. Honor and obligation. And that prompted me to ask the question, how can we honor ancestors that we don't know? And how can we uphold an obligation that we're completely unaware of? But let me break down and define the term so we're operating from the same set of definitions. When I talk about honoring our ancestral obligations, to honor means to show deep respect, or honoring the act of showing deep respect. Now, you must understand, in the African tradition, ancestor is very different than what most people would imagine. Most people think an ancestor is just someone who lived and died in your family line. That's not the African definition of an ancestor. An ancestor in African tradition is someone who has lived their life as an example of character and consciousness and courage and unwavering commitment, dignity, and integrity. In other words, you must qualify for ancestorhood, not just by dying. Ashe? Yeah. And then an obligation is a responsibility one has that must be fulfilled without question. So again, as you think back into your personal ancestry and the obligation that each of us have to live up to the standards of the best of our culture, these are the things that I want us to be thinking on. As we also consider this data point, For the first time in American history, according to National Center for Education Statistics, for the first time in American history, students of color comprise the majority of public school students. And many of them will end up right here, Ashe? And many have already ended up right here. As a matter of fact, that data point came out in 2015. And not only do students of color comprise the majority of public school students, guess what? That number will only be increasing. And there are a lot of people who aren't excited about that. There are a lot of people who are deeply fearful about what has been called the browning of America. But as we create community, we must understand that one of the best things that we can do is not just tolerate, but appreciate diverse cultures and ways of knowing. Ashe? So while the population has changed, policies, practices, procedures largely have not. I'm thankful that that's not the case here at Cosumnes River College, but in many places, policies, practices, and procedures largely have not changed. And for those that understand that the change is necessary, that can be very difficult to deal with because we see the challenges, we see the problems, and we know that change is imminent. And one of the things that we can do is we can align ourselves to a world that is dying, or we can align ourselves to a world that is being birthed into being. Ashe? And so with this demographic imperative, everybody, when is the best time to create change, everybody? When is the best time? Now, that means I have to learn something about you. That means you have to learn something about me. That means we have to come together in community and elevate and celebrate the best of each other's culture. But I come from a culture where not much is known about the best of my culture because the worst of my culture is placed in broad media circulation almost every day. Ashe? So I need for you first to understand that diversity does not mean equity. You can have a room full of all sorts of different kinds of people and still not have equity. And this is one of the challenges. We thought that by opening the doors and letting more people in from diverse cultures, that meant, oh, well, we've got this equity thing down. No, you don't. Because I'll never forget, I was invited to speak at a college in the Southeast, and they were very proud because they had won an award for their diversity. They had a nice mixture of African-American, Latinx students, Asian students, and so forth. And I challenged them, and I asked them this question. The diversity that's represented in your student body is phenomenal, and it's an example of what we can strive for. But one of the things that we have to improve on is we have to look at, does the faculty diversity reflect the student diversity? And then does the board of trustees diversity reflect the student diversity? It got quiet there like it got quiet here. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So you can see why Dr. Bush said we can't get complacent. Ashe? We can't get complacent yet because this is the hinge upon which power turns. There are people in powerful positions who are decision makers who maintain that power and are not easy in giving it up. Ashe? But when we create community, we can create a context where everyone is empowered. Is this making sense? So I also learned, as Dr. Naeem Akbar said, that presence does not equal power. Just because I'm here, I'm not interested in being a token Negro, in other words, if that makes sense. I'm not interested. I've been in some places where the level of diversity, I'm the darkest person in the room. Now, if I'm the darkest person in the room, that's a problem. Ashe? So presence does not equal power. One of the ways that I've tried to explain this is with this illustration. And I want you to look at the words that come up on the screen. The dot represents you. The circle represents the community. Okay? The dot represents you. The circle represents the community. I'm going to put some words up on the screen. And when I do, I want you to call out what you want in your family and in your community based on what you see on the screen. So when I put it up there, just call out the words that you want in your family and in your community, okay? Just go ahead and call them out right now. Okay. Okay, wonderful. Now notice where the dot is. Where is the dot, everybody? It's in the center. Everybody say centered. We have access to all of this: peace, power, unity, resilience, abundance, safety, security, faith, love, joy, productivity. We have access to all of that as long as we stay centered. We have access to all of that as long as we stay what? Centered in what? Centered in the best of our culture. But as I mentioned before, I come from a culture where most people have not been exposed to the best of the culture. They've been exposed to the, and then they assume that blackness means ignorance, means criminality, and means violence. Not because it does, but because those are the images that we constantly see circulated. Ashe? But something interesting happens. See, whereas we were once centered, if I've been miseducated, then there are forces and factors in society that act like this magnet over here to the left that attempt to draw us away from our place of power. And look at what begins to show up in the family and community when we've been decentered. Call out what you see that begins to show up when we become decentered. Just call it out. Academic failure, unemployment, behavior problems, apathy, deception, disrespect, division, and violence. All because we have been decentered. And so when I come to Cosumnes River College, when I come to your campus, when I come to your classroom, it should be a centering, a recentering experience. So take a look at this now. If I've been decentered, then I must be what, everybody? Recentered. One more time. Take a look at the screen. If I've been decentered, I must be what? When I come to your counseling center, when I come to your campus, when I come to your classroom, it must be a recentering experience, recentering me in the best of my history and culture and in the best of the history and culture of those around me. That doesn't mean that we are not able to critique the challenging things about each other's culture, but it just means that we have to set a standard for what the best of the culture is. Ashe? So part 2 is, what is cultural identity theft and cultural identity restoration? Several years ago, I was logging into my email account, and the news headline of the day came up. And it came up, before I get to that, let me mention, Dr. Naeem Akbar tells us the first function of education is to provide identity. And I would add to that that identity determines activity. Identity determines activity. When I was logging into my email account and the news headline of the day came up, it came up with this picture. And it said, identity theft is the fastest growing crime in America. Now, can I see a show of hands? How many of you or someone you know has been a victim of identity theft? Just put your hand way up. Put your hand way up. Look around the room. If you or someone you know has been a victim of identity theft. Now, when I ask audiences that, usually they will tell me, or usually it's 70 to 90% of the audience. And I've been a victim of identity theft myself. And of course, identity theft is when someone steals your personal information, gains access to your resources, and uses those resources, and you no longer have access to those resources. And it can take a long time to clear that up. And when that happened to me, I had a dramatic instant awakening that African Americans and other people of color are victims of cultural identity theft. Cultural identity theft. Well, what is cultural identity? See, with regular identity theft, the victim becomes confused, angry, and disillusioned. Psychologists have done profiles on victims of identity theft because if we were to go into your account today and remove all of your resources, you would be confused, angry, and disillusioned as well. Ashe? And then the victim must spend considerable time cleaning up the mess, and that's even if they know how to do it. What then is cultural identity theft? Cultural identity theft is the process of stealing a people's story. Stealing a people's perspective, history of accomplishments and achievement, and replacing it with false narratives of inferiority. And so just like there is a profile for victims of regular identity theft, I've created a profile for victims of cultural identity theft. Have you ever run into any students who are angry? Have you seen students who are angry and nothing's even happened? They show up angry and they may not even know why. Ashe? Have you run into students who are confused? Have you run into students who are disillusioned? Cultural identity theft, the stealing of a person's story, a people's story. So how do you take the group of people that gave the world reading, writing, language, and literature, architecture, engineering, agriculture and astronomy, mathematics and medicine, science and technology? How do you take that group of people and then convince them and the world that they're nothing but a race of pimps, players, criminals, and thugs? Cultural identity theft. And so I challenge our faculty to discover the African origins of the subject that you teach. That requires a lot more work. And we may be thinking, well, hey, man, look, I already got my master's degree. I already got my doctorate. I'm here to teach, not to learn. Well, you're not going to be a very effective teacher. Ashe? Because if you value my presence in your class, then you will want to study the best of my culture. And my culture has something to offer the world in every area of human endeavor. Well, wait a minute, Dr. Cool. What about I teach computer science? What are the African origins of that? Thank you. I'm so glad you asked. Because the mathematical binary system of zeros and ones comes out of the Nile Valley of ancient Kemet in Kemetic Egyptian mathematics. Ashe? There's an African origin to every subject that you teach. And so we have to take, as Dr. Molefi Asante says, 2 sets of notes. Everybody say 2 sets of notes. The 2 sets of notes are this, the notes that the professor gives students, because you're going to have to do this as well. I feel like I earned 2 doctorates because every assignment that I received in my doctoral program, I was looking at what the professor assigned, and then I had to go and see what my ancestors assigned. And so when the professor gave an assignment, I had to read that assignment, and then I had to go and ask myself, well, what did Dr. Asa Hilliard have to say about this in his book, Sable, The Reawakening of the African Mind? What does Maulana Karinga have to say about this in Introduction to Black Studies? What does Marimba Ani have to say about this in Let the Circle Be Unbroken? What does Ivan Van Sertima have to say about this in his book, Blacks in Science? What does Dr. Charles Finch have to say about this in the Star of Deep Beginnings, the African Genesis of Science and Technology? Are y'all following what I'm saying? 2 sets of notes. And so for the students, you have to take the notes that your ancestors require of you. That's part of your ancestral obligation. Ashe? As we go a little bit further, everything that is important to us on a physical realm, gaining access to our savings, our checking, our investments, our email, our social media, our streaming services, for all of those different services, in order to gain access to them, you must first authenticate your identity. And I'd like for you to know that in this day and age, to be successful, both mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, academically, you're going to have to authenticate your identity as well. Ashe? And history and culture are the access codes. Have you ever tried to gain access to one of these things that I have listed on the screen, and you couldn't remember your password, or you kept getting that signal that raise your hand if that's ever happened to you? And how frustrating is that? How frustrating is it for a student who's trying to gain access to success, but they don't have the access codes of their culture and their history? Ashe? Take a look at this. Because when I presented my theory of cultural identity theft to my advisor, Dr. Joyce King, she said, that's interesting, Chike, because it's not just identity theft, it's also identity replacement. And you can get paid big money in America to act like the N-word. Ashe? You can get paid big money in America to act in ways that are self-destructive, anti-African, and anti-human. because there's a whole industry and agenda around that. And what we see in this illustration from the cover of the book, The Architects of Rap by Les Taha, we see that these images are manufactured and placed in broad media circulation all over the world. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not against hip hop. I grew up on hip hop, Ashe. But I grew up on a quality of hip hop that challenged my consciousness and inspired me to get involved in my community and social justice activity, Ashe. And so one of the problems with these images is that it begins to make people think that this is what it means to be black. It makes white folk think that this is what it means to be black. It makes Asian folk think that this is what it means to be black. It makes Latinx people think that this is what it means to be black. But you know what's worse than that? Is that it makes black folk think that this is what it means to be black. And what does that create, everybody? I can't hear you. What does it create? Cultural confusion. And it also creates conceptual incarceration because those images, many people have trouble thinking outside of the limitations of those images. This is why when I was a high school student, even though I was doing poorly, there was one class that I always did well in, and it was expository writing. And in my junior year, I would always look forward to getting my paper back in that class because that was the only class I was doing well in. Interesting thing happened one Monday. We were turning our paper on Friday. We get graded on Monday, and I couldn't wait to get it because I knew it was going to be a 90, a 95, or 100. That's what I was making consistently in that class, struggling in all the other classes, but working it out in that one. But this particular day, my paper came back, and there was no grade on it. It just had 2 words. Somebody said it. I heard somebody say it. See me. Somebody, raise your hand if you ever got one of those. Yeah, more of y'all got one of those before, right? So I went up to the teacher, and I said, yes, sir, you want to see me? And he said, and I showed him my paper, and he said, oh, yeah, now I remember why I wanted to see you. What does this word mean? Told him what the word meant. He then said, well, what does this word mean? Told him what that word meant. Well, what does this word mean? I told him what that word meant, the dictionary definition, as well as the way and the context of how I used it in my paper. After going through 5 or 6 words, he still just looked at me and said, you didn't write this paper. I said, yes, I did write this paper. But there was something about his miseducation, something about his socialization that told him that a young man that looked like me should not be able to write like that. He didn't know that I would go to school to become an English major. He didn't know that in pre-college I would receive the writing award for all of the pre-college students at Hampton University. Ashe? He didn't know that I would write my first book by the age of 25. He didn't know that I would end up writing 8 books by the age of 35. He didn't know that I would go on to become an English teacher like him, a teacher of the year, putting on my own conference, the Teacher Transformation Institute, where people fly to Atlanta to learn our methods and different things like that. He didn't know that Ebony Magazine would name me one of its 50 leaders of tomorrow. He didn't see any of that from me, and I don't share that with you to impress you, but to impress upon you that what you get from your students is largely based on what you see in your students. Ashe? And this is why I have often said that at HBCUs, black intelligence is called, at PWIs, black intelligence is often called into question. But at HBCUs, it's called into action. Ashe? And I'd like to be able to tell people that at Cosumnes River College, that black excellence is called into action. That black excellence is called into what, everybody? Action. And this is the responsibility that is upon us. And so education is identity restoration. Ashe? So lastly then, all of this is leading up to, well, what is African-centered education? We're not in Africa. That tells me you don't know what it is. No, we're not in Africa, but Malcolm X said, if a cat has kittens in the oven, you don't call them biscuits. So don't mistake where you're born with where you are from. Ashe? African-centered education is centering ourselves and our students in the best of African culture, to examine and analyze information, meet needs, and solve problems in African or Black communities. Now, prior to the initiation of this, what oftentimes happens in schools, K through 12 and higher education, we get centered not in the best of African culture. We get centered oftentimes in the worst of the culture by the general society. And then it's reinforced in the schooling process. Ashe? And then we're not examining and analyzing information that's pertinent to the needs of African people or solving the problem in those communities. So an African American person can go to school, graduate, get a quote-unquote good job, but still not be of service to their own community because in school they never learned how. Is this making sense? So I'm asking us to challenge ourselves. Students, challenge yourselves to find the information that will help you to serve your community and all of humanity. Ashe? And I'm trying to inspire our faculty to make sure that when we're meeting needs and solving problems and teaching our students how to do that, take their culture and their community into account so that they can solve problems in their own communities. Is this making sense? So we're centering ourselves in the best of African culture to examine and analyze information, meet needs, and solve problems in Black communities. So when we talk about honoring our ancestral obligations, looking at our traditional values, one of the values that we've learned is asusi. Can you say asusi? Asusi simply means these three things: duties, responsibilities, and obligations. In America, we're focused on our rights. Hey, I got rights. I'm an American, right? And that's true. All of us do have rights. But in Ghanaian governance, in Africa, it's focused on asusi. You don't have rights. You have duties, responsibilities, and obligations. And if everybody handles their duties, responsibilities, and obligations, then everybody has the right to all that is good. Ashe? Another example of traditional African values that can serve us very well in a diverse setting would be Ubuntu. Would everyone say Ubuntu? It simply means, repeat after me, I am because we are. Because we are, therefore I am. Another way of saying that is a person because there are people. We exist because of the community. Without the community, there is no us as individuals. Ashe? And so in many of the presentations I do, I take people back to a time where Black people led the world in scientific innovation, literary production, and wealth creation. Much of this is not in the texts that we are called to teach from. But I like to say that the teacher and the professor are the curriculum. The professor, by their consciousness, by their competence, and by their commitment. Consciousness is mindset. What is consciousness, everybody? It's what? Mindset. Competence is skill set. What is competence? Skill set. Sometimes I've had the consciousness, I had the mindset, but I didn't have the skill set. Other times I had the skill set, but I didn't have the cultural consciousness. Ashe? That's why it requires a commitment to do this work. And then also, we also have to take into account social, emotional learning modalities, right? We must balance the intellectual with the emotional. We must check in with our students as much as possible to make sure that their mental health and wellness is good. Ashe? You say, well, no, that's the business of the counseling center. No, that's your business in the classroom. We have to make it our mission to be mindful of these kinds of things. As I begin to close, as a professor, I give tests. And so I'm going to give a test today. This test is going to see how well you've been paying attention. It's going to cover everything that we discussed. But it's only a 30-second test. And I promise you that everyone will not only pass the test, everyone will get 100. Ashe? All right. Because in order for us to be amazing students and leaders and professors, we have to learn to see with a different set of eyes. And in order to see with a different set of eyes, we'll have to do, as we said at the beginning, sharpen your eye and tune your ear so you know what you see and understand what you hear. So here's my test. Let's read the directions together, class. 1, 2, 3, read. Now, I'm not talking about the circles in the O. There or there. I'm going to put an image on the screen. And I want you to be able to tell me at the end of those 30 seconds. Please don't call out any answers until I ask for the answer. But once I put that image on the screen at the end of 30 seconds, I want you to be able to tell me how many images, circles rather, are on the screen. Are you ready? I can't hear you. Are you ready? Yes. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. How many circles do you see? 30 seconds. $20 seconds. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, let's get some answers, class. How many circles did you see? Just call out some answers for me. I heard lots of them. I need a specific answer. I heard 16. I heard 1. And then I'm looking at a lot of people who are looking like, what the hell are y'all looking at? Let me offer my apologies. Did kind of play a trick on you here. I asked you how many circles do you see, and when I put it up there, you didn't see circles, you saw what? Squares. But if you look a little more carefully, in between the squares, at the vertical lines. Would you raise your hand? Would you raise your hand if you did not see any circles until I just told you that one? Keep your hand up. Look around the room. Everybody look around the room. Look around the room. Look around the room. So these are all the people who didn't see any circles, okay? And it's okay. It's all right. Hands down. But if you look in between the squares at the vertical lines, I want you and I to count the number of circles together. Ready? Go. 1. Can't hear you. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now, for our purposes today, those circles represent the potential, the possibilities, the power for excellence and achievement that's within our students. Students, it represents the power, the potential, the possibilities for excellence and achievement that's in each and every one of you and for this entire institution. Ashe? But I have to tell you something that's interesting. Here's my observations about this. We were all looking at the same thing, but we didn't all see the same thing. And the reason we didn't all see the same thing is because looking and seeing are two entirely different processes. When I was in high school and the teacher accused me of plagiarism, he didn't see greatness in me. He didn't see what I could become. He didn't see that I should be on the fast track to writing. Ashe? Because looking and seeing are two entirely different processes. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. As a matter of fact, it's also been said that we have 3 eyes, 2 to look and 1 to see. And so if we're going to really create community from the chaos and the complacency, then we're going to have to learn to see with a different set of eyes. The last thing I want to leave with you is a challenge that I had in one of my graduate courses with Dr. Robert Smothers. I'll never forget this. It was a tough class. It was a data-driven class where we were doing a lot of statistics. I walked into class one day, and the board was covered with numbers from top to bottom. And I reverted back to my high school fears of math. It was very challenging. But I dug in, I started taking notes, and I started understanding. It was long, complex, formulas and everything. It was very challenging. And all of my anxieties began to kick in. But I got in a study group. Everybody say study group. Yeah, it was very helpful. That study group helped a lot. But then, on the day of the final exam, it was a 1-question exam. Y'all, if I'm going to take a test, I need a bunch of questions to improve. I need at least, I need 50 questions so that, each question's only worth 2 points. This was a 1-question exam. but it took an hour at least of calculations to come up with that final answer. We had to memorize these complex formulas and different things. It was research and methods. And couldn't use, a lot of the standard technology that we have today. So I memorized my formulas. I came into class that day. I had prayed. Anybody ever prayed before taking the test, right? And I bet I know your prayers, same as mine. Lord, if you just get me through this one, I'll never ask you for nothing else. I got in there, and I got in my groove. I started figuring it out. I'm working through all my stuff. I'm doing all my formulas, my tables and everything. And I take my exam up to Dr. Smothers. He said, "Oh, are you finished?" I said, "Yeah, but I don't want to turn it in yet. Can you check my math before I turn it in?" He looks at my paper. He says, And then he looks at me and says, "Your math is impeccable." I said, "I got it right?" He said, "No." "How could my math be impeccable, but I didn't get it right?" He said, "Your math is impeccable, but you used the wrong formula." But by the grace of God and the grace of Dr. Smothers, he allowed me to go back and recalculate everything and refigure it. And I ended up with a B that I am very thankful for in that class. Ashe? My only B in my master's studies. But here's what I want you to know. You could be a good person. You could be a wonderful person. You could be a nice person. I thought that I was a nice person, a good person, a wonderful person, but I still got the wrong answer. You could be good, you could be nice, you could be wonderful, you could have the best intentions, but without the opportunity to understand and practice culturally relevant teaching, without the opportunity to have these understandings about the preponderance of anti-blackness, without an understanding of these equity issues that we've talked about throughout today and will continue to talk about, you could be nice, you could be wonderful, but you could still be doing everything wrong. And that's a difficult pill to swallow. Ashe? I even worked hard at it, but my answer was what? It was wrong. We're living in an age that to get to where we need to go, we need to make some changes. Ashe? America has both tremendous opportunity and profound, deeply rooted structure in equity. If you were exposed mostly to inequity, it will be difficult to see the opportunities. And if you were exposed mostly to the opportunities, it will be difficult to see the inequity. Our job as conscious and committed global citizens is to take advantage of the opportunities and transform the inequity. Peace and blessings. Thank you very much.
Ooh. Let's just take a deep breath, beloved community. Let's thank our incredible keynote again. That was glorious. Thank you so much. So I'm so honored to be here today at Cosumnes River College. I also take seriously the great work of Dr. Akua, and I'm humbled to go after him in the presentation sequence. There we go. So teaching whiteness out of schools is personal and political, ideological and spiritual. I believe that teaching whiteness out of schools is one of our greatest human responsibilities of 2023. Whiteness was brought into schools methodically over time and generations. And it's going to take that same level of intentionality to pull it out. I also believe that any system created by the hands of human beings can be transformed by those very same hands. So I want to task us today in the reset and in the reimagining to think about what is possible and to push ourselves beyond that. My goal is to examine and really think collectively how and why we operationalize anti-racist work, giving particular attention to the role and responsibility of my people, white people. I want us to move beyond white fragility to white accountability. I want us to see ourselves not through guilt or shame, but with an understanding that we're implicated in the problems and solutions of race. People of color did not create racism, and yet are often expected to fix and clean up the mess. This has to stop. My pivot is inward to the creation and nature of white supremacy and how it gets implemented, passed on, and perpetuated. How do we teach whiteness out of schools? The answer is emergent and embodied. I say that because we are making this road by walking it. There are no easy answers or quick solutions. Racial justice demands a reckoning with ourselves and our place in the world. It demands decolonizing our practices, not just our curriculum. I ask today that you continue to dig, and there's going to be this metaphor of a tree, and some folks might want an off-ramp. I really appreciated what Dr. Bush said about growth, the pain of breaking open. And so I ask for all of that, that energy today. So let's get started. Here we go. Let's bring Ta-Nehisi Coates into the room. If we had mics, I'd let someone else read, but it's all right, I'll do it. But all of our phrasing, and folks can read along too, whatever's good, race relations, racial chasm, racial justice, racial profiling, white privilege, even white supremacy, serves to obscure that racism is a visceral experience. You must always remember that the sociology, the history, the economics, the graphs, the charts, the regressions all land with great violence upon the body. How do we embody racial justice as white people? Is it even possible? We are at war with our identity. The last speaker talked about cultural identity theft. And I'm centering the conversation differently because of my positionality. We are at war with our identity, warring with our inhumanity. As a society, we continue to witness eruptions of whiteness, but these roots run deep throughout our daily lives. What we are experiencing today is the fruits of a particular tree. These seeds have been watered, nurtured, and grown from one generation to the next. The great teacher Resmaa Menakem says that it will take 9 generations to dismantle white supremacy. Ooh, 9 generations. Let's get moving. This is intentional, intergenerational work. Nature as teacher. I, like many of you, live in this region and have been experiencing the downpour, flooding, and winds. Many people still do not have electricity. In between the rain and inside moments of calm. It's amazing, even awe-inspiring, to go outside and to look around at our surroundings on this land. SAC, January 8th. Look at that tree, y'all. Does that excite anyone? What does it mean to uproot yourself? If you uproot yourself, or you are uprooted, you leave or are made to leave a place where you have lived for a long time. We have lived inside whiteness for generations. And I am not just referring to white people. By now, I think many of us understand intellectually that whiteness is an invention. But there is a significant difference between recognizing the fallacies of race and embodying anti-racism. Today, let's consider the uprooting process as it relates to whiteness. Uprooting can be painful because it is, by nature, a disturbance of normality, a serious disruption to daily life. So here are the questions that are guiding me in this moment. How do we uproot? It's inspired by the trees falling in Sacramento. How do we uproot white supremacy from the root of it? How do we uproot whiteness out of ourselves, out of our cells? How do we teach whiteness out of schools? We're not going to be able to teach whiteness out of schools until we teach whiteness out of our own bodies. Well, what is whiteness? I know someone in here is thinking that, like, what? So I'm going to turn to my colleague and sister in this work, Bree Pickhauer, who writes in the book, Reading, Writing, and Racism, while individual people of color may also enact whiteness, they do not benefit from the broader system of white supremacy in the ways that white people do. So white supremacy becomes the what. White people are typically the who, and whiteness is the how it gets operationalized. You with me? Oh, I'm so glad there's water here too. Okay. So white supremacy is experienced in our infancy, for all of us, and reified before we even formulate our first words. Without the language or historical context to deconstruct why certain people are perpetually disadvantaged, oppression gets operationalized intuitively and internalized. These patterns are often self-fulfilling prophecies of marginalization and privilege, the building blocks of white racial hegemony. It's okay, we're just in class, y'all, we're in class. In the process of breaking down our privileges, I've seen some pitfalls. Consider that this is not about running away from ourselves, nor is it grounded in white guilt or shame, or even about how to be an ally. In my opinion, that's often part of our egotistical mirages that don't really do much to disrupt the status quo. Like the dangerous liberalism of Amy Cooper. Despite some good intentions, we continue to perpetuate racism. What's still missing from our reflections? Because this is us. And I say us to my white sisters. What's still missing from our reflections? Where is our racial integrity and collective responsibility? Whiteness is visible, invisible, and can seem invincible, which is all part of its dangerous allure. It creates delusions of power that we unconsciously perpetuate and defend. It is imperative that we lift the veil on the manipulative nature of white supremacy and see it for what it is. So even if we've taken some diversity trainings, and I would bet that I think Amy Cooper took some, even though we might intellectually be there, it's still us. I can't remember the name of the woman right now who was at Lake Merritt who called the police because folks were having a cookout. Well, how was it? Oh yeah, Barbecue Becky. Thank you. right? So there are these patterns that continue to show up in the way we are in the world, which means I think we've yet to fully uproot whiteness. When we think of that tree toppling, the roots, digging really deep. So we want to remember as we go deeper into this conversation that white supremacy is not a shark, it's the water. So let's recenter whiteness to dismantle it and decenter whiteness everywhere in our consciousness and in our curriculum. White teachers, unaware of how their own beliefs have been socialized around race, become complicit in maintaining racism. So let's recenter whiteness to dismantle it. Let's decenter whiteness to destroy it. That is a different conversation. That is a different policy, practice, modality. Now I'm going to get a little personal. I am going to show you a text message. Okay, Sac State. This whole Ghana trip, everybody in the region's going to the Ghana trip. The provost texts me this whole thing about how I need to help lead and organize the Ghana trip. Oh. Okay, great. Oh, people think I'm so down. No. If it's not an all-black delegation to Ghana, I don't think Sac State should fund it. Because we have to decenter ourselves. Not when people are looking, but even when people are not looking. So you can see my email to the, I was so excited because Anthony Browder was going to be there, but I was like, this is real. So I was taught that white people are not allowed to pour libation during rituals, not allowed to light Kwanzaa candles, and not allowed to say the N-word. I was taught these things in high school. I'm going to talk a little bit about it later. This is an example, though, when white people are not allowed to do something. This is an example of how whiteness gets decentered. This is often a trigger for us because we're so normalized and conditioned to thinking we can do anything we want, have anything we want, say anything we want, because we are who we are. And so I want us to think about those moments of discomfort as pleasurable, emergent, radical opportunities for growth. I had to start to see whiteness differently, not blindly, but through a different lens. So how did that happen? So I'm gonna give a little personal stuff. This is always like the hardest stuff for me because it's the radical vulnerability that is so easy to say we need. It's so much harder to do. So I'm gonna read two pieces. If you get bored, I'll just skip. So we're gonna have like some reading time, like some kindergarten reading time, if everyone's okay with that. One is from The Soul of Learning, and one is from Transformative Schooling. Let me start by saying this. So my name is Vajra Mujiba Watson. I'm the granddaughter of Alvina, Richard, Hal, and Mimi. I'm the daughter of Farid and Dara. I am sister to Barak. I am the mother of Sadiku and Adia. As far as I know, my ancestors are from Ireland, England, and Russia, and I have family ties that reach back to New York and South Carolina. I am from Berkeley and was raised Sufi. As I write in The Soul of Learning, some of my earliest memories occurred inside the Garden of Bismillah, the name of the communal house in Berkeley where my family and I lived during my first 5 years of life. I vividly remember the central prayer room, a gathering place for zikr and meditation. Although these early experiences shaped my outlook on life, I have not taken much time to revisit them. What I have said over the years is that at an early age, my mom would sing angels into the room. I forgot to do the click. Although we eventually moved out of the Garden of Bismillah, we stayed relatively active in the Sufi community. We would visit temples, mosques, religious sanctuaries. The absolute beauty of these places, I recall viscerally, is that they all felt familiar and similar. Inside a Buddhist temple, monks were reciting in unison, Om Mani Padme Hum. As a child, listening to this repetitive hymn over and over, the words blended together such that all I heard was the monks saying, "Oh, mommy, take me home." I'm grateful to have seen and heard the world through these sacred ceremonies. But the world is not just sacred. It is scarred, filled with scars from the brutalities of injustice. We're sinking inside this mythology of white supremacy. When my son was 17, he asked me, will white supremacy take the world with it? The pain is all too real. I started to get frustrated with some of my Sufi brothers and sisters who lived inside these close-knit caverns of community, chanting about harmony, while so many people are starving and the ravages of inequality continue to steal away our humanity. As much as we need spiritual-based soul surgery, it's also critical to consider who we are in the world. We are the embodiment of our ancestors, good, bad, and otherwise. Our race, class, and gender always matter. So what does it mean to have a kind of soul surgery with respect to my positionality as a 45-year-old white woman? Throughout my life, there have been many moments when close friends would tell me, you're not really white, and reference my name, Islamic roots, or multicultural upbringing. But I would shake my head and affirm my whiteness. Whether I am covering my hair or have locks, whether my children are black or not, whether I am given a pass or somehow considered down, this does not disconnect me in any way, at any moment, from all the ways I am white supremacy. Every aspect of my life is predicated on a system of oppression that reaffirms my pale skin privileges. It is inescapable, like a fish in water is wet, or the shark we just saw. Whiteness is the problem. I know this like I know I have bones in my body. It is the architecture of our lives. But let it be known, whiteness is not the solution. And white people, my people, we are definitely not the solution. We got race wrong, among other things. We have spent hundreds of years trying to divorce and other ourselves from humanity. It is going to take a lot of intergenerational work to rejoin us with the world. That is if the majority of people on earth, who are overwhelmingly black, indigenous, people of color, will even still accept us. Toni Morrison was spot on when she told us, quote, people who practice racism are bereft. If you can only be tall because somebody is on their knees, then you have a serious problem. And my feeling is white people have a very, very serious problem. And they should start thinking about what they're going to do about it, unquote. Building on Morrison's analysis, most of my scholarship over the past decade has focused on racial justice and transformative schooling. Yet as I come full circle, I see and experience how spiritual work can atone us in a different way, helping us move from being skin folk to kinfolk. Perhaps there is a lesson here about justice as spiritual practice. So the arc of this presentation is our collective belonging, but the journey to get there for us, white people, demands a different kind of commitment. Now, the development of what I call a critical white consciousness is in the book Transformative Schooling. And I actually want to read a little bit, but I know I've been reading and talking a lot. So do we want the next slide, or do you want me to read a little more? Okay. You know, only 2 people said it. So do you want me to go to the next slide or just read a little bit? Okay. Here we go. I had to check. Okay. So we have these pivotal moments in our lives. I remember in 1st grade, my teacher, Mrs. Slider, she said Columbus discovered America. I went home. My dad flipped out. He said the teacher was a liar. I'm like, teachers are lying? He said, don't trust what they teach you in school. So I had a skepticism. From that moment onward. In junior high, we had to do these iSearch papers, and my friends were doing papers on like, why are dolphins smart? And I was doing a research paper on why does racism exist? I remember going to the Berkeley Public Library on a quest, and the librarian handed me an array of books, from Gandhi's memoir to James Banks's multi-ethnic education. At this stage, I continued to examine racism as a phenomenon of marginalization, the colonized, without a critical understanding of the ways it interlocks with privilege, the colonizer. Although I benefited from structural racism, I didn't see it. I began explicitly examining whiteness when my classmate in 8th grade, Lydell Wilson, wanted me to comprehend that the white man is the devil. I listened to his claim. You got to remember, I have like Muslim roots. So I was like, Lydell, you're wrong. I listened to his claim. We would debate. I told him he was not a real Muslim. I feel so bad I said that. He told me I need to go read the autobiography of Malcolm X, The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. He told me I was ignorant. You can imagine how our debates went. So I did go read these books. And with a bratty, pale-skinned privilege, spent many lunchtimes and school dances talking to Lydell about the oneness of humanity and his misdirected perspective. Then in 9th grade, a life-altering moment changed my course. Oh, I hope we're doing okay, watching time, all good stuff. Okay. It's 1992. I'm in the first D-track English class at Berkeley High. I have this teacher, Mr. Bai. He loves European literature. When Mr. Bai would insist on the inherent value of Eurocentric texts, my classmate, Lance X, would grunt and speak things under his breath about the insidiousness of the readings. Then one day, Lance is absent. And this girl, Eva, raised her hand, and she says, what's wrong with that black boy that sits over there? And I was like, says this to the class, I'm thinking Mr. Bai is going to shut the conversation down. And he says, let's all talk about it. And so the class, a diverse, racially diverse class at Berkeley High School in the 90s, was talking about, I'm spilling water, but was talking about Lance behind his back and just about his beliefs as a black Muslim. And because I had read some of the books, I was very skeptical of what they were saying. And I raised my hand, and Mr. Bai called on me because I was always talk too much, like, ooh, what's Fajr going to say? And I was like, y'all are wicked. I'm like, Mr. Bai, like something is wrong with you. And I got up and I walked out of the class. I walked out of the class, and I decided at that time, Berkeley High had a Black Studies department, and Berkeley High had a Chicano Latino Studies department. Not classes. Like, we all had to take ethnic studies to graduate, but like, let's say the Black Studies department, you had African American history 1, 2, and 3, Black econ, Black psychology, Black male-female relationships, Black gold, Black soul, Black dynamite. That's just Black leadership, like a department. Chicano Studies had a department. The thing is that white kids did not go to those spaces. There was a racial divide. And after I saw all the shit talking, I don't mean to cuss, being spoken, I was like, I don't want to be in these classes. Mr. Bai, you are a horrible teacher. So I changed my entire schedule around. I enrolled in the Black and Chicano Studies department. So basically all my A through G's were done in those classes. And I entered them with a little trepidation and a lot of curiosity. Can't you imagine me just like good little white girl running in? So I devoured the readings, did all the homework, and was determined to learn. In my Chicana Latino literature class, like all my classes this semester, I was the only white student. This, however, did not stop me from owning the space and filling the classroom with my voice and presence. Mr. Malgosa would ask a question, and like a rocket, my hand would shoot into the air. It was a pattern, one that I was completely unaware of at the time. So one day, Mr. Malgosa asked me if I spoke Spanish. I told him that I do not. The next day, and for the rest of the school year, all our readings and class discussions would be in Spanish. Mr. Malgosa called on me to read a passage from the text. I was reluctant, but he encouraged me to make the effort. It was extremely painful. I incorrectly sounded out words, and some of the students laughed at me. When Mr. Malgosa asked us to discuss a topic, I was made speechless. Many things transpired in that space that fundamentally shaped my experience with myself, my skin, and the world around me. In my silence, I began to learn what it means to be white. I began to see that even before my birth, I was bred to embody my race and own space. Mr. Malgosa showed this to me when he shifted the power dynamic. I watched as my classmates literally came alive. The classroom finally belonged to them. I had assumed they did not know the answers or care about the texts we were reading. I soon realized that was not the issue. The root cause, right? The root, because we're uprooting, in many respects was my bravado. While whiteness was making me invincible in school, it was making others invisible. These realizations led me the following school year with a bit more common sense, self-awareness, and collective consciousness. Although I had a long way to go, and still do, I was becoming more awake to the ways I perpetuate white supremacy. Inside the Black Studies department, I discovered a home for social justice education. I was pushed, challenged, and given a mind-blowing education. While my peers in other parts of the school were reading To Kill a Mockingbird and Romeo and Juliet, I was devouring The Destruction of Black Civilization, the ISIS Papers, Iceman Inheritance, That Came Before Columbus, and countless other texts that still adorn my bookshelf and inform my studies. During this time at Berkeley High School, white teachers and students told me quite frequently that I was being brainwashed by Black people. One day I was cornered on the third floor of the C building by two heads of the history department. They were so angry that I crossed the unspoken divide at B High and did not know my place. They said that I was not learning anything but hate speech and venom, the same nonsense spewed by Malcolm X years ago. The older white male teachers proceeded to try to chastise and shun me. I remember looking up at them as their faces turned red with anger and contempt. At first I felt intimidated, and then I got frustrated, found my composure, and looked up at them straight into their eyes. I said point blank, I'm not in these classes learning what it means to be Black. I'm learning what it means to be white. As soon as I made this statement, they took a step back. I then took a step forward out of the corner. They really never bothered me again. I offer this glimpse into my education because it shapes the way and I understand equity in my work today. By no means do my courses of study give me some kind of pass. But it does help contextualize the journey. As Malcolm X so eloquently pronounced, if the present generation of whites would study their own race in light of their true history, they would be anti-white themselves. Here's just a random picture. So these were some of the Black male teachers at Berkeley High at that time. Someone just found it and sent it to me on Facebook, and I'm like, oh gosh, those were our teachers? Okay, so here is a question. You talked about one question, right? A mean teacher giving one question. This was one question. So this question was asked to a room full of black 10th graders and me. This was our final essay exam question when I was 15 years old. And we just had this one question, and our whole grade, or our whole final essay exam was based on it. This was only for African American History 1. Like I said, there's African American History 1, 2, and 3. So this is foundations. What are you doing to stop and or curtail the spread of white supremacy in your self-community in this world? Right. For 90 minutes. Right. But I was so taken by this question. I was saddened that more white people are not asked this question. And I proceeded to ask this question in every class I ever took. I went from Berkeley High to UC Berkeley, asked it. Went to Harvard, asked it. They're like, oh, here she come again. We all know what question she's going to ask. You know, because in physics, they say it's not just about the answer, it's about asking the right question. If we're not asking the right question of ourselves, we're not actually going to have the tools we need to dig up the answers. Okay, y'all with me? I'm going to go really fast. Really fast. I might even not get it through everything. I just want to, 4 key points. White people are not the center of civilization and progress. White people are not the majority and norm. White people do not own this world, and whiteness is not real. You know, so props to Neely Fuller in 1971 that warns if you do not understand white supremacy and racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Racism has destroyed more than any other socio-material system on earth. Consider the grave sites of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The grave sites on this Turtle Island, the entire ocean floor of the Ma'afa, or the ashes of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Injustice is not an anomaly. Do you know our history? I'm going to skip it. Oh, but it's so hard to skip. Just to say that Capital Public Radio did a phenomenal study of racial integration of schools in Sacramento, California. And so many, if you're from here, so many of the white grandparents of this generation were pouring concrete into every single swimming pool on school campuses to make sure that no child of color got in the pool with their baby. So we've got to get real about what's really going on in our own lineage. We have to get real before we can get it right. This is an interview with a teacher from Grant High School, right? About how she has to, what's wrong with her students' culture and has to have them escape Del Paso Heights. Echoes. This is a picture from boarding schools. But this idea that who students are is not okay when they come into the room and must be changed. If we had asked the teachers in those boarding schools, they actually thought that they were doing good. No braids allowed. No braids allowed. We see echoes of this today. So, who am I? How do I teach? What do I teach? Who do I teach? But to recognize the patterns. If we are in the ocean of white supremacy, we recognize the patterns everywhere. We look anew at the world around us. We see echoes. People of color did not create racism and yet are often expected to fix and clean up the mess over and over and over again. It will continue to happen, these patterns of inequality, unless there's significant disruptions. How do we disrupt? We're back to the tree, family. Can an entity born of and beholden of coloniality wrestle itself free of this genealogy? Asked Lee Patel. The answer is yes. But how? Okay, I went from a Mac to a PC, so some of my slides got messed up. Uproot whiteness by interrogating, disrupting, and dismantling racism. Racism about us, white people. Study your lineage through the lens of white supremacy and ask the hard questions about racism within your family tree. Dig, 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 get to the root of it. A reality built on lies is destined to demise. So then, who are we without whiteness? Uprooting whiteness with truth and justice, the work of learning and unlearning and doing and undoing and healing and belonging. We are the embodiment of our ancestors. I encourage us to double study our history and lineage. The white professor Christine Sleeter did just that and discovered her family stole land from the Ute Indian tribe in east central Utah. After realizing this information, she took all of her inheritance and returned it, $250,000 to the tribe. Once you become critical and conscious of your skin, this is just the beginning of a lifelong journey, a process of awakening. We become mindful of the skin that we are in. People of color are forced to see themselves in this light because of the ways society others their reality. But for us, we need to awaken and then reawaken constantly to our privileges. What does it mean to be white becomes our quotidian practice. Look at these folks. So I spent years interviewing white people who are moving strategically and consistently from white fragility to white accountability. I'm inspired by many of these people. One woman said, "We as white folks, regardless of other intersecting identities, must take ownership and lean into the responsibility of creating a new legacy rooted in racial equity and a rejection of our perpetual benefit from white privilege. This commitment is critical, and my continuous challenge to myself and others at CRC is our collective liberation." Imagine, family, what is a world without whiteness? On the one hand, we have white culture being synonymous with white supremacy. On the other hand, we have white culture being synonymous with cultural appropriation as folks are trying to find themselves. The harder work is to develop an anti-racist white culture, a new collective belonging for how white people are rooted to justice in the world and with one another. We will always do this through knowledge, through education, through the embodiment of our practices. We have to learn to do better. We have been taught our whiteness. Schooling becomes this doorway into social control, but education is a window out of it. Learning is the soul of social change. Be a solutionary. You know, there's that beautiful African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. It's education, y'all. So who do you want to become? What is your freedom dream? What is the truth of your truth? We cannot improve professionally until we transform personally. Look at that. The roots got wings. We're uprooting. It's the whole thing. It's dream work. When paired together, the words dream and work encapsulate something new and spectacular, existing at the intersection of who we are and where we want to be. Horizons hold the rising and setting of the sun. Horizons hold time, symbolizing intersections between imagination and reality, theory and practice. The horizon is a meeting place between sky and earth, between past ancestry and future possibility. Thank you.
as Sabrina and I were walking the perimeter and up through the tables, looking for folks who had written questions down for either of our speakers, I noticed that everybody was absolutely riveted, focusing on what was being said. And so we do have one question that came in from our folks at home. And so Sabrina is going to bring it on her laptop. On the question card, the audience had the opportunity to check who they wanted to ask the question of. So this one is for Dr. Akua. How did everyone get 100% on the test?
We practiced this the other day, so you know how I am. We got to get this right. All right, come on, Dr. Watson. Is this where they post it?
Yes.
Before I answer that, can we give Dr. Watson a wonderful round of applause for his presentation? The answer to the question, how did everybody get 100 on the test, is because while everybody may not have seen the 16 circles at first, it appeared that everyone did see it after we made some adjustments and explained how you could see it. And so when I teach, when I give a test, I'm not trying to trick people, and I don't gain pleasure from people not having the right answer. I want everybody to have the answers before they leave. And it appeared that everybody did, because I heard people saying, "Oh, wow," and they're pointing at the screen and everything. So that's why everybody received 100.
Thank you. And we actually have one more question, which is for both speakers. What are some strategies to fight the forces trying to reject, conceal, and deny this country's history of slavery, racism, and oppression, such as in the Florida educational system?
That's an interesting question, because I do a great deal of work in Florida. I've been doing some consulting work with Florida has a law that requires that teachers in K-12 teach the African and African-American contribution to whatever subject that they teach. And so that was actually the subject of my doctoral dissertation, because I'd never seen a law so comprehensive. So some of the other states have laws that require that you teach about slavery, you start from our lowest point in history, or that it's relegated to the social studies classroom. But theirs is more comprehensive. So imagine my amazement after doing over a decade of consulting, training teachers and leaders and higher ed leaders in how to be in compliance with that law, because most people don't even know the law exists. And it's been in existence since 1994. So I'd often been called upon to provide professional development, curriculum resources, and things of that nature. And then they called me and said, "Well, Dr. Cool, we want you to do an online course explaining the history of the African American history legislation." But then a couple of days later, they sent me an additional letter from the governor that was supposed to go out to all consultants and anybody who had a contract. And it was explaining that in delivering what you were called to deliver on your contract, you could not use critical race theory. So here's the thing about me. I don't need critical race theory to explain the truth. Critical race theory is a wonderful tool that elevates and illuminates the voices of black and other marginalized people of color. And it recenters their narrative. So it's a tremendous intellectual gift that was given to us by Derek Bell and Kimberly Crenshaw and other CRT theorists. But I don't need that to tell the truth. But part of the question was, how do we do that in light of the fact that some states are passing these pieces of legislation. And it's simple, but it's not, but it can be difficult. And the simple answer is this: speak the truth. It takes tremendous moral courage to speak the truth when others are silent, especially in cases where your livelihood could be on the line. It's wonderful now, in a sense, because I get invited all over the country and even internationally to speak. It wasn't like that when I first started speaking truth that people didn't want to hear. But there was something in my spirit and something in my soul that would not allow me to remain silent. And that if I didn't speak it, what would it mean for the quality of life for my sons who were coming after me? Ashe? And so it's that moral courage that requires us, as Dr. Watson mentions, to interrogate self, to look at what were the erroneous things that I was taught growing up? And how can I right those wrongs by the way that I live my life and by the way I articulate what I know to be the truth? And what I have found is that over the years, when we have the courage to do that, it emboldens and encourages others to speak up. It's like I was thinking the same thing. It's like this conspiracy of silence. I wanted to say something, but nobody else would. And so we've got to break that conspiracy of silence. And to do that, it takes self-interrogation and moral courage.
Yes, Ashe. So building on that, I really appreciate the question. I think it's important that we understand that what we teach is not neutral. And I think there are many conservative forces that understand that. I was doing some research on the various areas of Texas where now it's illegal to teach about Cesar Chavez and Martin Luther King, and school teachers can be fired for doing such. A teacher on the East Coast was fired in he was teaching current events. He showed an article from the Atlantic Monthly from Ta-Nehisi Coates. Within 24 hours, he was fired. So I'm like, oh, Sacramento, we don't rock like that. Then the Proud Boys came to Intercom High School, attacked the BSU, the Black Student Union, and got a teacher fired in 24 hours for being an anti-racist educator. When the students went back into that classroom, all the social justice posters were gone. The district had repainted the room white, and the only thing hanging was an American flag. I called the superintendent. I said, this whole generation of teachers and students just watched you and the school board bow to the Ku Klux Klan of the 21st century, or 22nd, what are we in? And he said, look, my wife was getting death threats. The board's children were getting death threats. And we just wanted them to move on. So we acquiesced. This same group then went to San Diego. They outlawed the In Lakesh poem, which I don't know if you are familiar with it, is now outlawed in San Diego. And a teacher that teaches that poem by Chicano playwright Valdez can get fired. So these are really real moments. And that there are entities that are organizing around schools, because when a young person is not nurtured with an equitable or awakened education, it will impact the rest of their lives. So what we teach is not neutral. It is and will be political.
Can we get one more round of applause for both of our speakers? Thank you so much. To close our program, I would like to invite Claire Oliveros, one of our VPs, to address us.
Thank you, Dr. Leslie Gale. Good afternoon. I'm Claire Oliveros. I serve as the Vice President for Institutional Equity and Research and Planning. Good morning, good afternoon. Great to see friends, family, colleagues, and new family here with us today. It is my deepest honor to give closing remarks, but also a really humbling and significant responsibility to close this spiritual morning. On this Friday, before the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s federally recognized birthday and holiday this coming Monday, Sunday would have been Dr. King's 94th birthday. Dr. King was assassinated nearly 55 years ago, and so we honor him and commemorate him today through the weekend and into the start of our semester. So on the eve of the MLK holiday weekend, we pause to reflect, reset, and reimagine through the lived experiences, life, and legacy of Dr. King, and honor and commemorate Dr. King's significant contributions and sacrifices he made to lead racial justice, birthing the civil rights movement, and continuing it through social justice movements today. I'm honored to close with an excerpt from Dr. King's last and most radical message that has a great deal of meaning, implications, and relevance for us today, now, more than ever. And Dr. Bush, synchronicity, our own desire to think about and contemplate what next, shared his own inspiration and influence from the book in his remarks and call for action in community about where do we go now? Where do we go from here? And we take inspiration from the actions and practices we heard today and from our ancestral wisdom to transform our college structures, systems, and self. The mindfulness teachings and practice of Buddhist leader Pema Chödrön says, she reminds us, through this wisdom in this phrase, the only way out is through. This is an excerpt from the essay included in the Testament of Hope, the essential writings and essays of Martin Luther King Jr., the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Where Do We Go From Here? The public address was during the Southern Christian Leadership Conference's convention in Atlanta, Georgia on August 16, 1967. The Reverend Dr. King says, I am concerned about a better world. I am concerned about justice. We've heard this quote, darkness cannot put out darkness, only light can do that. And Reverend Dr. King says, and I say to you, I have also decided to stick with love. For I know that love is ultimately the only answer to humankind's problems. And I'm going to talk about this everywhere I go. Hate is too great a burden to bear. I have decided to love. The Reverend Dr. King stated, and so I conclude by saying today that we have a task, and let us go out with a divine dissatisfaction. And I say, let us be dissatisfied with injustices and the status quo today moving forward. And Dr. King continues to say, and I must confess, my friends, that the road ahead will not always be smooth. There will still be rocky places of frustration and meandering points of bewilderment. There will be inevitable setbacks here and there. And there will be those moments when the buoyancy of hope will be transformed into the fatigue of despair. Our dreams will sometimes be shattered and our ethereal hopes will be blasted. And we may again, with tear-drenched eyes, have to stand before the burr of some courageous civil rights workers whose lives will be snuffed out by dastardly acts of bloodthirsty mobs. But difficulty and painfulness as it is, we must walk on in the days ahead with an audaciousness in faith, and I'll add hope, belief in the future. Dr. King says, when our days become dreary with low hovering clouds of despair, and when our nights become darker than 1,000 midnights, let us remember that there is a creative force in this universe working to pull down this gigantic mountain, a power that is able to make a way out of no way and transform dark yesterdays, that humble us, I say, into bright tomorrows of abundance. In Dr. King's words, let us realize that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. The great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. This year, 2023, marks the King Center's National Annual Commemoration of MLK Day, and the theme this year is, It Starts With Me, cultivating a beloved community mindset to transform unjust systems. I'll say it again. This year's theme, It Starts With Me, cultivating a beloved community mindset to transform unjust systems. Please be on the lookout for this spring's calendar of events focused on beloved community, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, led by the programming team and many of our partners that are here today in the back with Mr. Oscar Mendoza Plasencia. We hope you've enjoyed today's program. Thank you to the planning committee, the sponsoring offices, the keynote presenters, the speakers, the many helping hands who made this gathering an actual experience of hope, faith, belief, and justice. We'll continue to embed in our convocations the lived experience of our campus community and cultural traditions that are different than our own. And we thank you for joining us both in person and online. We wish you a great afternoon and start to spring semester or continuation to spring semester. And in the words of our recent speaker, Dr. Watson, and become solutionaries. Have a great afternoon. Ashe.